now, good, feel-good Friday afternoon. This is 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dorzinski and Dan Lucero here with you 3 until 6 this afternoon, taking you into a busy sports Preakness Stakes-filled weekend. We got some ponies to look forward to. I know you're excited.
They got 7 horses running in that race.
Yeah, the Preakness is small. Very small race.
Very small race.
It's an exclusive
At
race.
least, unlike the Kentucky Derby, it's not because a bunch of them have died under mysterious circumstances.
Yeah, do we have any reports on any sort of chicanery at the Preakness?
Horse genocide? No, we don't.
Yeah, not great going into the Derby a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, bad vibes.
But it will be a busy sports weekend, and we've got a busy 3 hours coming your way on 580 Sports Talk this afternoon. Before we get to some Royals baseball tonight, boys in blue back in action. They will take on the Chicago White Sox, 3 games over the weekend, beginning this evening. We'll preview that series coming up later this afternoon. And we've got some Royals thoughts to get to. By the way, maybe some new Royals Stadium drama popping up starting this afternoon. We'll get to that coming up over the course of the show today. By the by, no Royals game yesterday at any point. That was the first of 5 consecutive Thursdays the Royals do not have a game. That is very weird. I don't remember ever seeing a stretch of that many days or weeks in a row with an off day on the same day. I want to say it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. They had 3 or 4 consecutive Mondays, but they've got 5 straight Thursdays off. That's a lot of 3-game series.
It's really strange. And part of that stretch is a stretch where they actually have 2 consecutive days off, which is the strangest thing I've ever seen on a baseball schedule.
Yeah.
2 scheduled days off in a row, because they have the 2-game series, the interleague series, the I-70 series against St. Louis, and then they just don't play on Wednesday or Thursday. But like they couldn't wedge a 4-game series in there to start Thursday.
Right.
Like it's so weird.
It's very weird. Is that weirder than having a Sunday off?
No, Sunday off it's the weirdest schedule I've ever seen in my life.
It's very bizarre. They really said, it's just the Royals, whatever. Yeah, just put it, well, however it fits together, just throw it all together, and we'll just leave it at that. We do have plenty of Royals baseball coming up here, though, including stadium stuff in just a matter of moments. Also this hour, we'll play some Change My Mind, and Matt Derrick is going to stop by our Chiefs Insider on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline to talk all things Kansas City Chiefs. Speaking of the Chiefs, quarterback Patrick Mahomes, he wants a hockey team in Kansas City. And there is, in fact, a team actively in the NHL that is looking for its long-term home because their current home city said, we're not building you a stadium under any plan. You pay for all of it. You pay for most of it. We pay for most of it. No, we're not building you a stadium. So the Arizona Coyotes may need a home. And Patrick Mahomes wants that to be Kansas City. We'll get to that coming up in the 4 o'clock hour today. Also, speaking of relocation and realignment of sorts, we've got reports in that the Big 12 is interested in another new school. UConn. Feels like a heat check to me. I don't know about that one. We will discuss, though, because that's not just a message board rumor. That has actually been reported. Brett Yormark, was in Storrs, Connecticut this week touring the University of Connecticut facilities and campus. So there's some smoke there. Maybe not a lot of it, but we'll get to why the Big 12 might be interested in UConn coming up later on today. We'll get to a Royals weekend season preview, our 580 Sports Talk headlines, big news in the sports and specifically football world today. One of the greats of all time in the NFL, Jim Brown, passing away last night. So we'll touch on that, plus our playoff roundup and more in our headlines. And we've got to get to a story in which we're going to pay some respect to a couple of legends who decided that instead of spending big on their wedding, they catered Chili's. And some people on the internet said, we don't like that.
Some people are upset.
And those people are nerds.
Yes.
And deserve to be ridiculed.
Mocked.
We're going to talk
shouted down.
We'll talk about the Chili's wedding, and we'll also find our What Is Wrong With You weekly champion. All that and more. What a show coming up for you here on 580 Sports Talk. And of course, we would love for you to be a part of the program. You can either jump into the text line, 785-272-9429 is the text line number, or you can hop on into the comment section on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Just head to youtube.com, search Sports on 580. That's all you have to search. Will be the first result. You can even subscribe right from the search page, and that's the best way to find all of our video content, which includes on YouTube, live streaming video every single day. We have 580 Sports Talk. Let's get to the Kansas City Royals to lead things off. Again, they'll start a series tonight against the Chicago White Sox. The upcoming schedule is pretty favorable. And going into that, we'll predict how that might turn out in a moment. I wanted to go back to something we discussed yesterday. Now, on Mic'd Up today with Jake, we heard from Matt Lamar, who we actually talked about yesterday. He's a writer for Royals Review. He put together the list of 3 things that are actually good for the Royals right now. And we broke that all down. We're going to hear that conversation again, by the way, in 580 Sports Talk Overtime today. But, Dan, you had mentioned that Mike Petrello on Twitter had mentioned wanting to do a deeper dive into Bobby Witt Jr.'s defense, because that has been a major bright spot for the Royals this year. Not even necessarily just overall quality, but the marked improvement from what he was the shortstop and a fielder last year to where he is this year. And Mike Petrello actually put out those findings earlier today on Twitter.
Yeah, he put them out this morning. So that was great timing on Mike's part. I had nothing to do with it, but I appreciate it.
He's probably not listening. You could take credit.
Yeah, I could take credit for it if I wanted to, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take credit where it's not due. It's interesting that you point out one of the things that is a factor, I think, in a positive way, is you mentioned that Bobby Witt Jr. struggled as a shortstop and as a fielder last year. And that's a necessary qualifier because he played some games at third base last season.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say he played some games at second base last year. I don't remember if that's correct. But I don't think he did. I think that's wrong. I think he was just shortstop and third base. I was looking at a table and read it wrong. Anyway, so he played shortstop, he played third base, and they kind of moved him around a little bit. And now this year, he's just playing shortstop. And I've talked about this with MJ Melendez with regard to how he has moved from behind the plate to the outfield to back behind the plate as the Royals have deemed necessary. It's hard enough to adjust to playing at the highest level of professional baseball without having to worry about also learning a new position, a position you haven't played a lot of as a pro. Like, that's tough. That's difficult. And it's going to affect you as a player one way or another. It is either going to affect your defense in a negative way. It's going to maybe affect your offense too in a negative way. And I think we've seen that the Royals have gotten some better results from Melendez at the plate here the last few weeks once they said, hey, man, you're an outfielder. That's where we're going to play you, and we'll live with your peaks and valleys as a defensive outfielder. But when you're in the lineup, if you're not DHing, if you are in the field, that's the glove you're going to wear. For Bobby Witt Jr., he seems to be benefiting from just playing shortstop this year. So that's one of the conclusions that Petrello nods at. From his Twitter thread on the subject, and if you are on social media, you should follow Mike with just in general for the statistical analysis that he brings and the baseball analysis. He's at Mike_Petrello, which is Petriello. So he points out that this year, Bobby Witt Jr. is 6 outs above average defensively, has made 6 outs above average. We talked about some of those defensive metrics, how, we can't necessarily figure them, but the idea behind them is it's a measurement of the ball is hit to a certain spot at a certain velocity with a certain launch angle. How likely is it that play, how often is it that play is made? And then if you make the play, you've essentially made an out above average. If you don't make a play that's more commonly made than not, then you get dinged. So Bobby Witt Jr. was 11 outs below average last year, and this year is 6 outs above average. And the reason that he's 6 outs above average is because he has gotten better at making the easier plays. Petrello breaks it down into plays that are made by an average shortstop 70% of the time or less, and plays that are made 70 to 100% of the time, the routine stuff. Bobby Witt Jr. was really bad at the routine stuff last year. He was 10 outs below average on plays that are made 70 to 100% of the time.
That's brutal. That's not bad. That is brutal.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about that, right? And so that means generally, if you're talking about plays that are that commonly made, you're talking about errors. You're talking about like sloppy stuff, focus stuff. mental mistakes as much as they can be physical mistakes. Bobby Witt Jr. now has 3 outs above average on those more routine plays, in addition to being 3 outs above average on the less routine plays. Now, when we think about the less routine plays, Bobby Witt Jr. was actually right at average on those last year. And in our mind's eye, those are the plays we can picture when we think about Bobby Witt Jr. Those are the flares over the shoulder, the running catches in short left or in short center, or that play made about a week ago way in the hole when he threw from his knees to get a runner from short left field. Those plays are a pretty good sign that you should be an excellent defensive shortstop. But now he's starting to make the more routine plays. Jake and I were talking about this off the air, and Jake had a golf analogy for it. Sometimes improving as a golfer doesn't mean making more birdies. Sometimes it just means making fewer bogeys. Sometimes it just means on a par 4, knocking it onto the green and 2-putting instead of missing the green, flubbing your chip, missing your birdie putt or your par putt and turning that into a bogey or worse. So sometimes that's where the greatest improvement comes from, is not messing up.
Yeah.
And that's where Bobby Witt Jr. has gotten better. Fewer errors, fewer mishandling of routine plays. And it's also broken down by Petrello in terms of the launch angle of batted balls. It was mostly ground balls and low line drives last year that he struggled with. That's where he was 10 outs below average again on those plays. This year, he's 4 outs above average. Handling ground balls and those low line drives, those hot shots. He's just handling those plays better. The simple stuff. And when you're not focusing on, this is my first time through the league, my first time seeing all these pitchers when I'm at the plate, it's my first time in all of these ballparks, it's my first time facing all of these major league caliber pitchers, and I'm getting yanked from position to position, and I'm at a position that's unfamiliar to me part of the time. When you go from that to, okay, I'm an established big leaguer now. I know what to expect when I go into different ballparks. I know what to expect when I see certain pitchers. And I know when my name's in the lineup, I'm going to be at the 6. I'm going to be at short. I think those are the factors that have gone into seeing this dramatic improvement. And again, Bobby Witt Jr. has the tools to be a superstar in the league. Mm-hmm. Just because it hasn't happened yet, it hasn't been immediate. The tools are all still there. The defense improving to this level makes it more likely that he gets there. Because if he's an above average defender, which he has been a solidly above average defender so far this year, then he doesn't need to hit 300. He doesn't need to hit 40 home runs. If he hits 250 with 25 home runs and steals 40 bases, and he's an above average defender at shortstop, that is one hell of a valuable baseball player.
Those are reasons why, even when you see struggles from young players, it's where the value of things like analytical data and the peripheral numbers, where there's a lot of value in that, because and just from a fan perspective, because you can see, well, maybe the returns on the field aren't exactly what I want them to be, but there's, reason to believe this is not only getting better, but it can continue to get better. And I think the offense is going to come along more consistently, and we've again seen those flashes, but you can't be bad at everything or struggling with everything all at once. And I think those struggles in the field have pretty much gone away, or at least the consistent struggles in the field have largely gone away. And that's a good spot to be in if you're the Royals. And it's awesome that Witt has figured that out. I think the consistency is a big deal, and I really appreciate that from this coaching staff and this current regime, that they are interested in not moving guys around and saying, well, we can make them more versatile. No, it's just sometimes the shortstop is just a shortstop. Sometimes, you figure out, hey, MJ Melendez is going to be better off if he just plays the outfield. He's a natural catcher. He played catcher a long time, came up as a catcher. Get that. We need his bat, and we need him to worry about his bat more than we need him to worry about catching duties. We're going to put him in the outfield where he's a good enough athlete where he can handle that. I respect that. And I've complained about this one specific minute detail a bunch from the latter stages of the Dayton Moore era, but makes me look at the farm system and drafts from the Royals recently and think maybe it wasn't a great idea to just draft like 400 shortstops and just think, oh, they can play anywhere.
Well, if you're going to move them, you start moving them in the minor leagues. Mm-hmm. And like if Bobby Witt Jr. looks like he's going to be your guy long term, this is the time to figure out if Nick Lofton can play center field,
right,
or second base,
exactly,
or whatever it is. And there are some guys who handle that ability because that's kind of what their role is going to be. They are not impactful enough where they're going to be, everyday players. So they understand, hey, I might play second base one day. I might play third base the next. I might play right field. I might play a bunch of different positions. My value is going to be in that utility role. And you begin preparing for that. Bobby Witt Jr. is not that. Like, you bring a guy up like that, you figure out how valuable he's going to be for you at one of the most valuable positions on the diamond. It's really rare for young players to respond well to having to play 6-7 different positions. There are some guys who arrive in the major leagues as fully formed offensive players, and they can handle a little bit. Chris Bryant, your guy, is a good example of that. Joe Madden played him all over the diamond.
Yep.
Played him at short, played him at center field. Like, he was a better athlete when he was younger, before injuries started. And he's still a good athlete. Like, he plays a decent right field now for Colorado. But when he was young in Chicago, they can move him around the diamond because what he was as a hitter was what he was day one.
Yeah.
At the major league level. With Bobby Witt Jr., there's still some stuff to work on. And the Royals knew that. The Royals know that Bobby Witt Jr. is not a fully formed offensive presence yet, that there's still a little too much swing and miss, that he's still a little too apt to chase pitches instead of taking his walks. Because, and this happens with young players all the time, when you're so good as an amateur player, you can hit anything, and you can hit anything hard, and you get good results from it. So you're so results oriented that the process of having an at bat, that takes a little longer sometimes to develop. And we're seeing that with Bobby Witt Jr. I think he's got it in him to get there. I really do. I think it's a learned skill. Chase rate, things like that, that's a learned skill. I think it is possible that Bobby Witt Jr. does learn that. It's also possible that he doesn't, but I'll bet on the talent, and I'll bet on the baseball IQ with him. But your task gets so much easier when you're simplified, when you don't feel like you're having to multitask, when you don't feel like you're trying to juggle chainsaws, so to speak. And the simplification of things for Bobby Witt Jr. this year, I think, has been good for him on the defensive end. And I expect that we'll start to see it pay some dividends on the offensive end as things continue this season.
So that's the one positive thing entering this weekend for the Royals, is that we have enough data at this point to say, no, this is for real. I mean, this is really a positive trend for Bobby Witt, and I think for the Royals, and being willing to just say, put him in one spot, don't move him all over, don't complicate things more than they need to be. The other positive thing here is that the Royals, while still bad, are playing a weak schedule for their next several series here. They are going to play 3 against the White Sox, who are 13 games under 500. They have 3 against Detroit, who's 19-22, although has been worse against the Central than they have been against every other division of baseball this year. Washington, they get at home for 3 games. The Nationals are very bad. They are 8 games under 500. And then the Cardinals for 2, they're 7 under. However, they also score like a million runs now.
Yeah,
they something clicked. Some switch was flipped, and suddenly they are playing much better baseball.
Still giving up a lot of runs, but now scoring more runs than they are allowing. And it would not be shocking if St. Louis is at the 500 mark by the time they play the Royals. But right now they are not.
Yeah, for now. We can use the data we have in front of us. What is a fair expectation for how many wins the Royals can have during this next stretch and how many games is it exactly? 14 games. So you've got 4 series of 3 and then 2 with the Cardinals. I missed Colorado too. They are also 6 games under. You had included that.
Yes. Yeah, that's their first series of July after the 2-day break after the weird 2-game St. Louis series. Is that when St. Louis is going to London? Or is that later?
No, that's later. That's a weekend, I believe. That's the 23rd and the 24th.
It's so weird. I don't get it for the life of me.
London or the 2 days off?
The 2 days off.
Yeah.
No, Major League Baseball going to London. I guess that's just going to be a thing that happens now.
I can't wait to bet the over for that game.
Yeah, that's a fact.
This was supposed to happen in 2020,
right?
But that obviously did not happen.
So it's 14 games with teams that currently sit under 500, and it's 14 games against teams with pretty modest to outright bad starting pitching, you would say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So the Royals, who offensively over the last 25 games are still a top 10 offense in Major League Baseball in weighted runs created plus and some other, runs per game and some other metrics as well. They're going to have a chance to put some numbers up. The question is going to be, can the pitching take a step forward? Can Brady Singer continue to get on a roll? Can they get some better outings from Greinke starting tonight? Those are the kinds of things that have to happen for the Royals to really. They're still kind of looking to steady the ship, because a lot of the teams we're talking about here, like Detroit started miserably. Colorado started 6-17. St. Louis was like 10-24, I think, or something like that. Like a lot of these teams started really, really awfully, but have had a spell where they've played good baseball for a couple of weeks and kind of steadied themselves and taken them off of the 110 loss track, which is, again, a very hard thing to do over a 162 game season. Like Colorado's had that, they're in that stretch right now. They've won 11 of 16. This would seem to be Kansas City's opportunity to have a stretch like that, where they could go 9-5 over this stretch or something like that, or even 8-6, just to kind of stabilize things a little bit for them. It's possible, but it's going to take some improved starting pitching to put themselves in position to do enough offensively.
I think for me, the promise is that you've got a bunch of bad starting pitchers out there, but I don't know. I have such a hard time looking at any stretch of schedule and saying, oh, this could be favorable for the Royals. Like, they lost a series to the A's, who are an affront to baseball. Like, there is nothing that leads me to believe that this can be, or that this will be, I should say, some sort of turning point stretch. Like, the Royals are going to go 10-4 in these 14 games, and suddenly, whoa, hold on a second now.
Here come the plucky little Royals.
Like, I have no reason to believe that's going to happen, because they have not given me enough reason, even with a better offense for the last 25 games. They have not given me enough of a reason to think this team can accomplish that. If it was going to happen at some point, though, it would be now, because you're not going to get a stretch like this for most of the season, especially not over such an elongated period of time. The thing that is a little bit concerning on the back stretch of this, St. Louis and Colorado are both playing better. I don't think Colorado is like good, but they have played better baseball since they were at the start of the year.
Yeah,
the Cardinals
like
definitely have
11-5 in their last 16. Cardinals have won 9 of 11, I think.
I think so. So I don't know. I'm hopeful. I hope they play better baseball. That'd be great. I just cannot believe that we are going to see a stretch like that until we actually see a stretch like that.
Right. Got to see it to believe it. I totally understand that.
And even with a top 10 offense in all of baseball for the last 25 games, there's still 5 games under 500 in that stretch. It's hard to.
Like the offense, I don't think we look at the offense on a daily basis as being the issue. The issue is, are they going to get 5 to 6 good innings from their starting pitcher and give their bullpen, which has pitched well generally, a chance?
That's fair. We've got to get to our first break. We'll preview the Royals-White Sox series that begins tonight, coming up in a little bit. Right now, though, we've got some Change My Mind up after the break on 580 Sports Talk. Welcome back to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Brzezinski and Dan Lucero here with you. Matt Derrick is going to join us coming up in just a little bit. We'll talk plenty of Chiefs football. Change my mind for you. And we're going to talk about this topic a little bit later on, leading off the 4 o'clock hour, in fact, about the Arizona Coyotes and how Patrick Mahomes wants them to come to Kansas City. Does Kansas City make sense, etc.? Change my mind. Kansas City's not getting any more professional sports teams for the meaningful future.
In the Big Four, I probably agree with you.
So NBA and NHL, essentially.
Yeah, in the Big Four major sports, I'm going to essentially agree with you there. I have come to the strong belief that, number one, the WNBA needs to expand, and number two, Kansas City would be a perfect place for a team.
Yeah, you know what? That's fair. That's very fair. And the 2021 first overall pick got waived before opening night. She had been in the league 2 years and got waived because there's just not enough room.
No, there's not enough roster space. There's 12 WNBA teams. It's not enough.
It's insane.
And like they've got a good TV deal. Like this is the time is, I think, right for that league to look to expand with the growth of interest in the college game. And now, like, these college stars, like, you want to follow them and watch them play, and they're not lasting very long on their WNBA teams because there's but so much roster space. So I think the WNBA is going to expand relatively soon. I think Kansas City be a perfect expansion city for the WNBA.
No, I think that's actually a really good take. By the way, do you know how many draft picks there are in the WNBA draft?
2. It's 2 rounds.
3.
Oh, is it 3?
36 picks.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's my bad.
Do you know how many players are rostered in the entire WNBA?
Well, 12 teams, 12 times 12 is 144, or probably more than that.
It's 12 a team.
Oh, it is 12 a team.
144. A quarter of the league's total roster space comes in the draft every single year.
And a lot of those players get cut.
I'm looking at the draft right now. Monica Cesano, who was pick number 26 overall.
Yeah, Zanano from Iowa.
Second best player on Iowa's team after Caitlin Clark. She got waived.
Yeah.
She was...
There was a first-round pick who got waived.
I mean, it's preposterous that they don't have more teams. There's enough money and support now, I would think, especially playing in smaller arenas, you can make this work in more places. I mean, I don't know if they'd play at the T-Mobile. Play a municipal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Play somewhere.
They can make municipal work.
It could happen.
Yeah.
It definitely could.
Changed my mind. There is such a thing as too much overtime playoff hockey. Last night, the first game of the Eastern Conference Finals between Florida and Carolina went 4 overtimes and almost 4 full overtimes. The winning goal, scored by Florida's Matthew Tkachuk, came with 12 seconds left in the 4th overtime. That's too much. That makes for not very good and compelling hockey or sports entertainment would be my argument here.
Okay. I'm going to say there's no such thing. And the reason why is I don't like, and we've had this debate many times over the years, or this discussion anyway. I don't like ending games in a completely different way to like how the game is played or the spirit of the game generally.
I'm not advocating for that either. I'm just saying that the further along you get, like it's less pleasant. You just find yourself at that point hoping somebody ends it instead of being like enthralled by it. Like first overtime playoff hockey, hell yeah, like snorting cocaine and riding a helicopter out or riding a motorcycle out of a helicopter. That's how the tweet goes. Riding a motorcycle out of a helicopter. Second overtime. All right. Yeah, this is great. By the time the 3rd and the 4th overtime rolls around, those guys are gassed. And their minds are going, their heads are going, their legs are going, and it just ends up feeling like kind of luck, whoever wins the game. So my argument is not that they should change the system. My argument, like Wayne Gretzky said the same thing on the intermission report between the 3rd and the 4th overtime. Wayne Gretzky said, look, it's time for somebody to score and end this. The longer this goes, the less I'm enjoying it. And that's the great one saying it. So that is my argument.
Fair enough. Did you watch any of the game?
I watched from the middle of the 2nd overtime to the end of the 4th. And I would not have stayed awake for the 5th.
Let's get to a quick break. Matt Derrick will hop on with us next here on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm Frank Miller with Your Money.
Mr. Official, let me ask you something. How'd you 6 of you miss a play like that?
His name is Matt.
Are you ready?
My name is Matt.
Let's go.
Let's go to Kansas City, where we talk to our good pal Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. It's our Chiefs insider here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you. Matt, what's going on, my friend?
Just trying to enjoy a lazy, dreary Friday afternoon in Kansas City. I don't know about you guys, grinding towards the weekend, but I'm ready for something to happen.
Yeah, the weather today not great, and yeah, kind of ready to get to the weekend. Real quick before we get to the football, we were going to talk next hour about Patrick Mahomes making a clarion call out to get some support for the Arizona Coyotes moving to Kansas City because they do not have a stadium anymore. The NHL team out in the greater Phoenix area. Yay or nay on the NHL coming to Kansas City?
I am yay for it. I'm one of those types who believes that there is very little in sports that's more exciting than the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, that playoff hockey is like one of the pinnacles of sports. So I have no problems with that. I don't follow the NHL as much as I used to when I was younger and had more time, but I think it'd be great. I don't know how Kansas City would endorse it or not, and whether or not the fan base is there would flock to it, but I'd be all for it. And I think if Mahomes somehow got himself involved, I think that'd be enough. I mean, you can see what happens when, he gets involved in anything in Kansas City. People jump behind it. So you got Patrick Mahomes on part of your minority ownership group. Hey, the NHL team, I think it'd work in Kansas City.
Did you stay up to watch last night's 4 overtime NHL playoffs thriller?
I did not, and the funny thing is that my brother-in-law had hip surgery, so he's been staying with us recently, and he's a big hockey fan. And so I asked him about the game last night, what happened, because I hadn't heard yet. And he was like, yeah, it was 3-2 and 4 overtimes. Yeah, just about went to 5. And I'm like, wait, what? That is exactly why playoff hockey's the best.
Yeah, it is. I wasn't watching the game and I kept checking to say it's still going on. It's still going on. How many overtimes? It's kind of unbelievable in that way. Well, Matt, let's get to some Kansas City Chiefs news and notes here. Did you see the quotes from new Chiefs linebacker Drew Tranquil on the Ross Tucker podcast this week?
I have not seen it. I've heard about them, but I have not actually gone back and listened to it.
So he was talking about, he felt appreciated that the Chiefs are going after him and what it was like leaving the Chargers. And he gave a quote and said, when my wife and I flew into KC to do our signing, I was like, this feels weird, man. I've been in the same building for 4 years. Now I'm in my rival's facility signing a contract. And I mean, I think we hear quotes that are similar to that all the time when guys move in division or they just spend a long time with one team and then move on to somewhere else. But as we look back on some of the moves the Chiefs have made throughout the offseason and how they are going to apply to this roster going into training camp and into 2023. What do you see the role being for Drew Tranquil? I think that, to me, is maybe the move that I don't want to say made the least sense of any this year because he's a good player and he's coming off the best year of his career, but they've got Willie Gay. They've got Nick Bolton, who are your two nailed-on starters. Leo Chanel, they drafted with a top 100 pick a year ago, and he's a great athlete. He played a ton in the Super Bowl. We know the Chiefs like him a bunch. I guess I'm just having a harder time kind of seeing what Drew Tranquil's role in Kansas City is going to be.
Yeah, that's one of the things that for me to watch is just what kind of a position that they carve out for him because, I mean, he's a starting caliber linebacker. I mean, there's no doubt. You look at, what he has done in the chart with the Chargers over the last few years. He's been a good player. And like you said, I mean, coming off a career season last year, I mean, it's hard seeing him squeezing into a reserve role, but I'm not even sure if that's exactly, what it's going to be. I mean, the Chiefs have had some depth issues at linebacker the last few seasons. And, whenever they had an injury, anybody goes down, I mean, Darius Harris was the next guy up. And no knock against Darius Harris, but Drew Tranquil's in a different level. And he can reliably play all three of those positions. So, it's not like you've got somebody going in there who doesn't know what they're doing. I mean, Drew Tranquil is a quality backup at all three of those spots. But most importantly, he's been a Mike linebacker. He's called defenses. That's something that the other guys on this defense haven't done before. And he's done it at the NFL level. So to me, I mean, one, he is a much better fourth linebacker than anybody that they've had in recent years. And so if they do have some injuries, and let's face it, I mean, you're going to get guys banged up at that level. I mean, guys are going to miss games. There's no doubt about it. And suddenly you got a good guy like Tranquil that's coming off the bench. That's a plus right there. But I'm really intrigued to see how they use him in some of their substitution packages. That's where I think he could be at his most valuable. I think there's a reason, reasonable that you could say that he's the best coverage linebacker that the Chiefs have. He's certainly the kind of guy that you can match up against tight ends. He's done it with the Chargers. I mean, I think he's a little bit of a do-everything linebacker. So I'm really intrigued to see how that they use him. If all he is a fourth linebacker and just a super sub, I mean, I think that's valuable enough. But I'm really intrigued to see how they use him in maybe some of the nickel and dime looks because I think he's the kind of hybrid flex guy that could kind of go back and forth between, a dime linebacker. You can play maybe a little bit of safety at times, kind of ish in the box if needed. And, the Chiefs have in the past so often gone with a true safety in the box as an extra defender. But Tranquil's the guy that can, play in that position and bring a little bit more heft to it too. So I'm really intrigued to see him in those spots.
Is that sort of a move then in retrospect that's more so, less that we need a player to fill this spot and more so we're not going to find more talent than this. He's a very talented and successful player. We'll assign him and then just we'll fit him in somewhere.
I think it depends on the player. I mean, for the value and, and I would fit Brian Edwards, safety to design from Tampa Bay into this category too. These two players that just kind of fell into the Chiefs' lap that, were available. Chiefs kind of, checked it out and said, hey, would you be interested in coming here? It's probably not a starting position, but, you'd probably be the next guy up in a lot of places and we're going to be able to figure out a way to get you some snaps. I think that's different than maybe some other guys who could have come in and been more, single dimensional. I think with both those players, they're both guys that can do a lot of different things and have a ton of flexibility. So that's where I mean, you really see the Chiefs favoring more and more over the last few years. And I think this year's free agent class is a great example. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's offensive line, receiver, linebacker, safety. corner even. I mean, they're looking for players who have flexibility and versatility. That just seems to be the hallmark of what they're looking for. Whether that means that Steve Spagnuolo is or his successor, whoever it may be, might be looking for a positionless defense philosophy. I don't know if you can make that case yet, but it certainly seems to be something in the way that they're procuring players now that they're looking for that.
Our guest is Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. He is our Chiefs insider. He's joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline, just as he does every Friday here at this time on 580 Sports Talk. Again, you can check out Matt at ChiefsDigest.com and at Twitter at Matt Derrick. Matt, a little bit of breaking news within this last half hour. Field Yates, among others, reporting that the Chiefs and Felix Anudike-Uzomah have agreed to terms on the rookie deal for the Chiefs' first-round pick out of Kansas State. That's 6 of the 7 draft picks for the Chiefs that have already agreed to their rookie deals. The Chiefs seem to work faster than a lot of other teams do, at least in recent memory, on getting their draft picks under contract. Is that something that they prioritize, or what enables them to be able to get that bit of business done fairly quickly after the draft relative to their competition?
Yeah, I think one probably big benefit is that the Chiefs are drafting near the end of the first round every year. And once you get to that point, contract negotiations with rookies aren't that complicated. It's usually at the top of the first round where sometimes offset languages and you worry about what happens if a guy's not a bust and how that works out down the road, and teams trying to look to protect themselves. When there's not a little bit less money involved towards the end of the first round, that gets to be less complicated. And the deals are pretty straightforward. I mean, with the way that the cap is structured now and with the way that the draft is structured, everybody's pretty much slotted into a spot. And so there's not a lot of leeway. I mean, all you can really do is negotiate some, different terms, like I said, offset language, for later on down the road when you break up with a player. But for later round picks and everything, even late first round, that's less of a deal. So I think that certainly has been a help. I don't think the Chiefs, play terribly hardball. Maybe some teams try to nickel and dime rookies here and there, maybe trying to save 10,000, 20,000 where they can. Chiefs don't really seem to be into that. And if you need any evidence of that, look at every year. It seems like the Chiefs are among the biggest spenders when it comes to undrafted free agents and how much money that they commit to either guaranteed salary or signing bonuses to get the guys that they want. So I think both those probably play a pretty good factor. The Chiefs like to get guys in. They don't want to play around. They want to get them signed and make sure that they don't miss any of the offseason.
Nate Taylor of The Athletic wrote earlier this week about the Chiefs pursuing a contract extension with Chris Jones. That idea is not exactly new to anyone. It's been heavily speculated that the Chiefs would try and get something like that done with Jones this offseason. The reporting suggests that Jones is looking for something in the $90 million range. He would like to be at least the second highest paid defensive tackle in the National Football League. If that's the money he's looking for on a 4-year contract extension, should there be any hesitation from the Chiefs in getting that done?
I'm not sure I would have any hesitation. If anything, I mean, I think it's probably you might need to try and get a deal done before the money changes on what would be the second highest paid tackle in the league. Right now, Aaron Donald's contract is out there as the huge outlier, and there's been no indication yet that Chris Jones is trying to touch that necessarily. But he does, money is respect, and he does want to be respected. And certainly he has earned it. I mean, I think he's earned to be the second highest paid defensive tackle in the league. And given everything that you know about Chris Jones over the years, the fact that, he shows up, the fact that he shows up in shape, notwithstanding when he hasn't had a contract and is not obligated to be somewhere, I mean, that's understandable. But, Chris has done everything this team has ever asked of him. And any questions that there ever were about his work ethic or, being in shape and working on his body and making sure that he's there and available, I mean, he's always done that. He's always answered the call for this team. So I don't know what the hesitation would be other than, hey, you want to make sure you get the right deal and it's smart for both sides. I do still expect something to get done. I mean, sooner than later. I still think July is the most reasonable timeline. Certainly could happen earlier than that. Wouldn't surprise me. But, last time that these two sides had it in a contract negotiation, it went into the middle of July. So I think that's probably pretty reasonable again. But there's been no indication that things aren't going to get done. It seems like both sides are pretty optimistic.
Finishing things up with Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. It's our Chiefs Insider here on 580 Sports Talk. You can follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Derrick. And, of course, head to ChiefsDigest.com for all the best coverage of the Kansas City Chiefs. And he joins us here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Matt, is Patrick Mahomes going to get a reworked contract before week 1?
I don't know. I mean, I know there's been some talk about it and everything. I'm still not sure it's going to get done this year. All along, I mean, it seemed like that people close to the situation with the Chiefs were talking about maybe 2025 was the year that it gets done. Because remember, Clark Cup pointed out, we're only 1 year into the actual extension, that 10-year extension. So you've got 9 more years to go on that deal. And the Chiefs are always expected to add some more money into the contract. I don't know that they've planned on necessarily doing it this quickly. I mean, you could do it. I mean, as far as, putting it down on paper and, but maybe the money doesn't get added into the deal until later on, but at least it shows up on paper so that Mahomes' deal looks maybe a little bit better than everybody else's. But I know there's a lot of talk about, hey, the average annual value that Mahomes is dropping back now to everybody else. But I still point out, nobody else in the NFL has got a $300 million contract, much less a $450 million contract. So I still think he's the guy out there. He's going to get paid. I don't know if it gets reworked right now, but within the next 18 months, yeah, I would say for sure.
For all the best coverage of everything pertaining to the Kansas City Chiefs, head on over to ChiefsDigest.com and make sure you're following Matt Derrick on Twitter. His handle is at Matt Derrick, and Matt joins us every Friday here on 580 Sports Talk for our Chiefs Insider. Matt, we appreciate the time, as always. Thank you so much for hopping on with us. Best of luck getting through this dreary weather today, and we'll talk to you next week.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care, everybody.
That is the best of the best. Matt Derrick joining us from Kansas City for our Chiefs Insider here on 580 Sports Talk. Remember not all that long ago, before the last CBA, when we had first-round picks holding out like every year?
Yeah.
Also, Sam Bradford becoming like a top 10 paid player in the league before playing a snap.
Oh, I remember.
Weren't those the days?
For those guys, yeah, it was.
Yeah, they were.
Those were definitely the days if you were Sam Bradford.
Best day of his life, probably, certainly his NFL career. That's going to do it for this first hour of 580 Sports Talk. Come on back, though, after the national and local news. We've got plenty to get to in the 4 o'clock hour, including Patrick Mahomes is interested in bringing an already active NHL team to Kansas City. The Big 12 is apparently interested in bringing the reigning college basketball national champs into the fold, and we'll find our weekly winner in What Is Wrong With You. All that and more is coming up next hour on 580 Sports Talk.
Tickets are now available.
Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Just getting started. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. Live, of course, on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, and as well in the capital city on 104.9 FM. Streaming around the world at 580WIBW.com. And, of course, on YouTube, where our channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Happy Feel Good Friday to you and yours. Thanks for swinging by and hanging out with us. Jam-packed first hour and a jam-packed second hour of the show coming your way. We'll talk a little Patrick Mahomes and hockey to Kansas City. Does anything fit in Kansas City? Coming up here in just a moment. We'll also get to our weekly championship in What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Top City Metal Supply. The DUI dog trying to hang on. It's so funny. Every time I see DUI dog in our notes, I laugh. And then the Big 12, interested potentially in more expansion into the Northeast with Connecticut. I was surprised that there were actually legs to this, but there are. Brett Yormark was in Stores, Connecticut this week getting a tour of the facilities. So we'll talk about that if it makes any sense and if UConn would even be interested in that coming up later on this hour. Of course, we will get to your texts. The number is 785-272-9429 as always. And you can also jump into the comment section on YouTube. Channel, again, is called Sports on 580 WIBW. The comment section is wide open to you. I forgot to mention this yesterday on the show. We touched on it earlier, and we'll get more in depth into it. Jim Brown today, 87 years old, passed away. One of the greatest players in NFL history, on-field greatness.
One of the greatest athletes ever.
He played in the NFL for just 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
He led the league in rushing 8 times.
Yes, he did.
He was a first-team All-Pro those same 8 seasons. He won 3 MVPs, 4 if you count the UPI MVP award, which doesn't exist anymore. Unbelievable player. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Also wanted to give a shout-out to the late, great superstar Billy Graham, one of the first, national, maybe international wrestling stars. We had a couple of folks in the YouTube comments wanted to give a shout-out to him. The reason... Fun fact, well, not actually very fun, that Vince McMahon wants his wrestlers to be called superstars is because, several decades ago, he hated that Billy Graham was drawing better numbers in other promotions as superstar Billy Graham. So he tried to water down that word by calling all of his wrestlers superstars.
Huh.
Yeah, very vindictive man.
Yes, one of the, bottom 5 human being maybe ever, Vince McMahon.
Great business sense. Not a
bad
guy. Bad guy. But yeah, shout out to the late great superstar Billy Graham as well. What a life for a couple of them. All right, we will again talk about Jim Brown a little bit later on in headlines and the I'll use the word remarkable life that Jim Brown lived both on and off the field. I did want to get to this though today. Now this popped up earlier in the week, and it at first really only caught fire on Twitter because things do. When things happen on certain social media platforms, that's where they blow up first. There's a big post on Instagram. People notice it first there. Big post on Facebook, etc. You understand. Most of us are on some form of social media these days. Well, Patrick Mahomes the other day, after the news broke that the city of Tempe, Arizona, outright is refusing to build the Arizona Coyotes a new stadium. They said, are they the Phoenix Coyotes? Have I been calling them the wrong name all
No,
show?
they are the Arizona Coyotes now. They were the Phoenix Coyotes for a very long time. They changed to being the Arizona Coyotes.
That's what I thought.
Some years ago, yeah.
Okay, I suddenly had a thought wait a minute, I might be calling them the wrong name. Okay, the Arizona Coyotes. They played this past season in the same stadium that Arizona State plays in. Arizona State, brand new Division I hockey program. Seats 5,000 people on campus in Tempe. So they split the logo on center ice was half Coyotes, half Sun Devils.
Yeah.
It was the trident, the fork, right? So already a bad situation. The league owns the team. They have no fan support. It's bad. Or very little fan support anyway. So the city of Tempe says, we're not building you a new stadium. Sorry, but no. They proposed, I think, 3 different plans of varying levels of community and taxpayer payment to get a stadium built. And the city just said no. And all 3 proposals were not even close.
Well, they got kicked out of their old arena.
Yeah, because they couldn't make rent.
Yes.
They have no money.
they are a disaster, and they should have moved 5 years ago. And yet they're still dug in, and they're going to play in a college hockey arena, a minor league size hockey arena next year again, which is a terrible look. It would be like if, like, I don't even know, like if the Royals had to play home games at Legends Park.
Yeah, pretty much.
For a season.
Pretty much.
Or two. Because they missed their rent payments at Kauffman Stadium. Like, for one, it's an embarrassment for your organization. For two, it's an embarrassment for your league.
Huge embarrassment.
That you've got, and look, I know it's a brand new arena at the very least. It's modern facilities and things like that, but it's a 5,000 seat arena. It looks so bad on television. It's bad when you're drawing 4,000 people to a hockey game.
It's like if you've ever watched like small, and I mean small Division I schools play basketball, like in the Northeast, you know, the America East or
Patriot League,
Colonial, things like that. Some of those gyms are tiny.
Yes, they're high school gyms. Almost.
They really do. I think some of them do share with high schools. Albany this year, they had to play in the same gym that the Albany, New York Community College uses because their stadium is being renovated. So they're literally playing in like a multi-purpose field house for Division I basketball.
Remember when TCU did that for 2 years?
Yeah. They literally played in a high school gym.
Yeah, they played in a high school gym.
Like that is a similar equivalent to where the Coyotes play.
I never figured out if they ran like JV games between TCU and Kansas in the alternate gym. They ran the girls JV while they ran the men's varsity. And
oh my God,
people running back and forth to check the scores.
Wouldn't that be great?
Shooting for cans of Mountain Dew at halftime.
Yeah. So Tempe said, no, we're not building you a stadium. The Coyotes have been tweeting through it, a phrase that you may have seen before. Again, if you are a Twitter user, they posted a poll the other day like, hey, where should we build our new stadium? If we get 20,000 retweets, we'll tell you where or what our next stadium plans are going to be. Like, guys, this is bad. That you're not helping your situation with this. So it is very clear they should have moved years ago. They don't have a home right now. Patrick Mahomes the other day decides to tweet, what if the team came to Kansas City? We already know he's involved in Royals ownership. He's involved in Kansas City Current women's soccer ownership. So he simply tweets out, KC Coyotes has a nice ring to it. At NHL, what do you think? Or what y'all think? And then he also tagged the T-Mobile Center. The T-Mobile Center, when it was built, was ready-made for hockey.
Yes. There was a time when there was the thought that Kansas City was going to get either the Penguins or the Islanders.
Man, wouldn't that have been wild? Pittsburgh Penguins moving to Kansas. The Kansas City Penguins. What a great name.
Oh, it would have been awesome.
So, that fairly innocuous tweet. He's an incredibly powerful person with a big social reach, wildly popular in his new hometown because he's the best quarterback in the NFL.
And what Patrick Mahomes wants, generally, he gets. If you don't believe me, go look for a Whataburger in the Kansas City metro area.
And then sit in line for 4 hours as you wait to get your food. It's true, though. Like, he's getting this all over. This blew up on social media, including the woman who runs the social accounts for some Phoenix sports website, saying some pretty nasty things about him and his family, which I will not get into because it's not worth the time. But it does beg the question. You don't have an ownership group in place. And that has always been the issue. When people say, oh, man, there's so many fans who would love an NBA team or an NHL team. And we got the arena. We've got no one to own the team. The NHL does not want to own the Coyotes.
Right.
Like, that is worst case scenario. They are sticking with them. Like, they don't want to own the team. The league does not want to own the team. So you don't have an owner, but you do have an arena. And you do have a local fan base of sports fans in general that will follow a winner. We know that. When the Royals were winning, they were selling out the K. We know that Arrowhead sells out. We know Chiefs fever is everywhere. KU, Mizzou, K-State, the local colleges, when they're good, I mean, KU's always got that home field advantage or the home court advantage, but you know what I mean. They will support a winner in our general area. Teams win right away in the NHL when they end up in new places. Now, granted, this wouldn't be expansion. This would be an active team.
Yes.
But how can you not look at, well, damn, Vegas got behind the Golden Knights immediately.
And they've now been to 3 Western Conference Finals in their 6 seasons of existence.
Seattle has glommed on to the Kraken quickly. 2 seasons in and they've already had playoff success. Like, if you're the NHL, I would imagine that Kansas City is on the list. I would imagine, especially because there's already an arena, and an arena that progressively has fewer and fewer dates picked up because no one puts concerts on in Kansas City anymore. That's a complaint for a different kind of radio show. But my point being, to have that arena, to have a built-in fan base, I imagine that is appealing, but I don't know if that's legitimately appealing enough to say Kansas City is going to get one over Houston or Quebec or trying again in Atlanta or some other bigger market.
On the one hand, I can't believe they'd try again in Atlanta because it's failed twice, right?
I agree.
The Atlanta Flames were a failure and they moved to Calgary, and then the Atlanta Thrashers failed and they moved to Winnipeg. The problem, though, with Atlanta is they built those two teams. The Flames played at the Omni and the Thrashers played at Phillips Arena, State Farm Arena now.
Mm-hmm.
And those were downtown arenas. Picture the city of Atlanta. You've got a picture in your head about like the demographics of Atlanta, Georgia. Note that the Atlanta Braves do not play in downtown Atlanta anymore. Quite famously, do not play in downtown Atlanta anymore. No. They are a little more ensconced in, let's say, an area of the metropolitan area, part of the metropolitan area that is more demographically friendly to the sport of baseball. Okay, can we say that? Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
It would also perhaps be a demographic that is a little more hockey friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thought behind a return to Atlanta is A, Atlanta is booming population wise.
Yeah,
and
it is.
B, well, we don't have to put them down. If we build them a new arena in a place where hockey fans can get to, just like baseball fans can get to the Braves Stadium. And yeah, I'm winking and making air quotes that you can't see. I guess I'm not really doing it, but hockey fans and baseball fans, you know what I mean? If you make it,
the Braves wanted to relocate by white people.
Yes.
I mean, it's not really hidden. Like the demographics of downtown Atlanta, where Turner Field was, and where Cobb County, Georgia. I mean,
yes, they put it in Cobb County. They put it in Gwinnett County,
yeah.
Which is a little more, hockey fan friendly. So that is the thought behind Atlanta. The thought behind Houston is, again, exploding in terms of population, and an ownership group in place with deep pockets. Tillman Fertitta, deep pockets.
So I was reading about Houston in particular when I was putting this together. Tillman Fertitta, who we're talking about Vince McMahon. Tillman Fertitta, not liked by a lot of people. There are a lot of people who have personal beef with Tillman Fertitta for a lot of reasons, but he does have billions of dollars. He owns the Rockets. He pretty much owns the University of Houston. Like, I don't think UH would like to tell you that, but he does. Like, all their money for athletics comes from Tillman Fertitta.
No, for real.
All the money for the school comes from the Fertitta family. Apparently, he has actually had meetings with NHL brass about getting a team to Houston, which makes me believe that they would be the favorite. But does Houston want a hockey team? Does Texas need another hockey team? I think that is at least worth asking. But again, maybe money talks. Plus, then the Toyota Center, I assume that's where they would play, is full every day for 6 months.
Yeah, you got that and the Rockets sharing space. Kansas City is appealing in the sense that, like you said, the arena, it was almost purpose built for hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the idea was that's why the upstairs press box is so expansive. It was intended to be a hockey press box. It's a huge upstairs press area. That's why Brett Yormark felt like he could kick us all up there for the Big 12 basketball tournament this year, because it's so big. But it's a purpose-built hockey arena, and there's no NBA team that you're fighting for market share with. And so I think Kansas City is appealing in that way. Kansas City, like Atlanta, is a failed hockey market previously. 1970s, Kansas City Scouts, they weren't around long.
No.
They didn't make it long before they pulled up stakes and they moved to Colorado, and eventually they would go from Colorado to New Jersey. Now, being a failed hockey market does not disqualify you because Winnipeg was a failed hockey market. They got a team back. Colorado was a failed hockey market. They got a team back and have been very successful in Denver since then. So it's not a disqualifying factor for Kansas City. I guess geographically for the league, like you'd get a nice rivalry with St. Louis that could be interesting. You know, maybe a rivalry with Dallas. Maybe those games against Colorado could be interesting. Like, geographically, there's a fit there. To me, it makes more sense than Houston, and it makes more sense than Atlanta. And it might be more prepared in terms of the arena and more prepared in terms of being able to financially carry its weight than if they put another team in Quebec, say. Like, the Quebec Nordiques moved to Denver because they couldn't survive. Yeah. They couldn't make NHL hockey work. It wasn't viable financially in Quebec. As much as obviously there are more hockey fans in Quebec than there are in Kansas City, they just couldn't make it work. So I think a lot of things are in place. The question is, who's going to front the money? That's the big hurdle that Kansas City has to get over. Who's the billionaire? Who's the sugar daddy here?
I don't think there is one. Now, I can't speak and say that I know. I mean, I know Tillman Fertitta because he's got his hands in a bunch of different sports franchises and a bunch of different businesses, and he's a fairly large name. I don't know who would finance something in Atlanta, but Atlanta is also another huge city. There's a lot of Southern money out there. Somebody has the deep pockets to make that happen. For what it's worth, I think Atlanta's last on the list. Of the four teams that pop into my mind, being Quebec, Houston, Atlanta, Kansas City, I think Atlanta's last because it didn't just fail. Like, it failed to an embarrassing degree when the Thrashers left most recently. I don't know who would be able to front the money in Quebec, but it's also hockey in Canada. There would be theoretically some sort of support. Maybe there's better support now than there would have been or there was 30 plus years ago. Hard for me to say. I don't know specifically. But it is hard to not have suitors up front, let alone even one up front. Like, who's going to do it? It ain't going to be the Anschutz family. That's who built and owns the T-Mobile Center. And when it was built, it was, hey, we're ready for hockey. We're going to bring all these events. And what if we lure another team in the future? But there was never any real basis behind any of that. So it's not going to be the Anschutz family. I don't think the Booth family, the huge donors at KU, I don't really think they have any ties to that other than being the KU donors. So I can't see that happening. There's plenty of people in the greater metro area who have money, but like, we haven't heard of anyone who, again, is banging down the door to say, I want to own a team. I want to bring something to Kansas City. If you look at baseball, for example, the cities that want to expand, Nashville is a great example of this.
Orlando's another one.
They already have groups. Like, they have groups that are saying, hey, we're ready to take over ownership. We've got the money ready. We've got the infrastructure ready. Bring us a team. We're going to make the rest happen. Kansas City doesn't have that. Because if they did, because it's not like maybe you don't know about it. No, those groups want to get right in your face and tell you, we can do this. We are going to make this happen. Again, Nashville baseball, Orlando, Charlotte baseball, I know has had multiple groups.
Salt Lake City recently.
Portland, yeah, all sorts of groups. They would be right in your face telling Seattle for hockey when they got the Kraken.
Yeah.
Was the same kind of thing.
They got the group in place before they got the team.
And I just don't think Kansas City has that. And that's why I don't think this can happen. Like, when we were talking earlier, when we played Change My Mind, and you mentioned Kansas City for the WNBA, great fit. I actually do agree with that a lot. There's a lot less investment that goes into that than that goes into a hockey team, just because of the value of the franchises and the value of the product and the TV contracts and all of that. And with the WNBA, you could theoretically play at Municipal or at T-Mobile or, whatever you end up doing. I just don't think that there's anyone in Kansas City who would front the money for that. And that's why I think it's going to be hard to get a team there. And I understand from people who are in the greater area, and this includes Topeka too. We're not that far from Kansas City, just like it would include people, I don't know, as far east as Columbia, maybe. I don't know, maybe not quite that far east, but this general area. There's so little in this part of the country. I mean, it's St. Louis, Kansas City, Denver, and then Omaha North and Oklahoma City South. Like there's just so much open expanse that it would really be a regional team. In a way, the Blues are a regional team right now. That's the other thing. Would the Blues raise a fuss about a team being on the other side of Missouri? I don't know. If they end up getting $1 billion, it might not make a difference.
Yeah, I don't know how that would be different than if it were a group looking to have an expansion team. I don't know if, because there's like territorial rights, like the Orioles in baseball. The Orioles had to sign off on the Expos moving to Washington. So I don't know if there are similar territorial rights that the Blues would have to say, okay. The other thing too, if there's a family that's synonymous with hockey in Kansas City, it's the Hunt family. Lamar Hunt Jr. is Mr. Hockey in Kansas City. He owns the Mavericks. And so you have the Hunt family name, if not all of the Hunt family wealth necessarily thrown behind the possibility of hockey. But even Lamar Hunt Jr. has told the Kansas City Star as recently as last month that it just doesn't really feel realistic to get an NHL team out here. Just doesn't feel right. And I mean, nobody would have their finger on the pulse more than Lamar Hunt Jr. when it comes to the viability of Kansas City as a hockey market.
Yeah.
So much fun as it would be, much as I'd love to drive an hour to see like when the Avalanche come to town or when Connor McDavid is doing a night at the T-Mobile Center against the Kansas City whomevers, I have a hard time believing that Patrick Mahomes can manifest this. But betting against him is something you do at your own risk.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I had a point I was going to make, and it was a really smart, good point. And, I was going to say, the Hunt family, their weight and energy and money is behind soccer right now. They're trying to make Kansas City soccer a bigger, and obviously, you already have the current, you already have Sporting, bringing the World Cup in as well. That's where a lot of it, and they own the Dallas team, FC Dallas. I believe the Hunt family owns them too. So yeah, their energy is all behind soccer at the moment. They're not staying in Arizona though. There's no way the Coyotes can stay out there.
No.
I will also add this during this time of year when, especially if the Royals aren't very good, it would be kind of nice to get a little more hockey in the show.
Yeah.
Or NBA. We could very easily turn, even if the KC Coyotes weren't playing this deep into the season, there's a little more hockey talk you can get to.
Yeah.
Instead of.
Could really dig in on the playoff roundup.
Yeah, really good. Let's get to a quick timeout here on 580 Sports Talk. On the other side of this break, though, not only are we going to talk a little bit about why the Big 12 might be interested in UConn, but we will find our weekly winner in What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk.
Farmers State Bank has an all-in-one
What the hell?
It's time to find our weekly winner in What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. Find out who is going to advance on to our end of the month Tournament of Champions coming up in just about a week and a half from right now. It'll be a Tuesday, Wednesday semifinals and finals coming up at the end of the month of May. Of course, What Is Wrong With You is brought to you by Top City Metal Supply, who cuts the metal you need to your specifications, which saves your time, your money, and material. Never settle when it comes to metal. That's Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. Our current winner for the week is the DUI dog, a gentleman who, he was going to get pulled over for a DUI. He was swerving. He was drunk while he was driving. And after he got pulled over by a police officer, he swapped spots in his front seat with his dog. Then when the police officer approached the car, he took out from the passenger side and was apprehended 20 feet later. He didn't get all that far.
20 feet later, such a great detail.
2 new stories today. Try to take down the DUI dog, although that is going to be a tough task. Dan, let's have you go first with your story today.
Social media can be a nasty place, particularly if you are a person of any real stature. There are always people who feel like they can say anything they want to you. Your DMs are public or open to all. If you're on Twitter or Instagram, you're going to hear some nasty things from people if you are, again, a public figure, and particularly if you are a politician on either side of the aisle in these times, in these current political climates that we live in. One such politician who frequently receives nasty grams in his DMs is Eric Swalwell, who's a Democrat who represents California's 14th congressional district in the Bay Area. The other day, he got a direct message on Twitter from a user by the name of Bruce Miller, who had 54.4 thousand Twitter followers. The message read, "Almost time. Would you rather Guantanamo or just execution?" Followed by 3 laughing emojis. Bleepin' traitor was how the message finished. We can assume there's some kind of political disagreement there. This jumped out to Eric Swalwell because he did not understand how this seemingly random person who DM'd him had so many Twitter followers. Well, it turns out that this Bruce Miller played 7 seasons in the National Football League with the San Francisco 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
The 35-year-old Miller was a 7th-round draft pick of the 49ers in 2011 and played 5 seasons there, including reaching the Super Bowl with the team in 2013. Played fullback. That's maybe why you don't remember the name, because who remembers the names of fullbacks, right? Anyway, Miller's NFL career ended the first time before the 2016 season after he was arrested and charged with 7 felonies after police said he attacked a man and his 70-year-old father after trying to enter their hotel room. That incident came about a year after he was arrested for allegedly shoving his ex-fiancée and destroying her cell phone. Miller tried to return to the NFL in 2020, played 8 games for the Jaguars, was suspended for violating the PED policy, and has not played since. Miller would go on to confirm on Twitter that, yes, it was me, and I was just trolling, which is a weak excuse. The 49ers reached out to Congressman Swalwell about the threat, and Swalwell released a statement saying, quote, "Threats of political violence are unacceptable," which I think is something we can all agree on.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to get into Representative Swalwell's politics because I'm not smart enough to have a smart conversation about it. I will tell you this, though. Nothing that he has said or done deserves someone to threaten to either send them to Guantanamo Bay or murder them.
Yeah, that's not the kind of thing we should be doing.
So I read a little bit about Bruce Miller's post-football activities when this story broke the other day. And again, not going to get into his personal political beliefs either.
We can assume they are at odds with Congressman Swalwell's. I
think generally people would consider them to be something on the fringes a little bit of his personal party. That's fine. We're, not going to get into that. We all have our personal beliefs. That is entirely fine. It does not give you the right to threaten to murder someone, though. To execute someone.
No.
That is not okay.
And then to say, I was jokes, just jokes. And then you've got like a violent history of your own. Like,
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, it doesn't come off as jokes when you attacked a 70-year-old man and tried to break into their hotel room. Like, doesn't really come off very jokey.
Yeah, what?
When you've got that kind of personal history.
Yeah, that's oof.
You don't get to make those jokey jokes.
My story, I think, is quite funny, and it includes the funniest misinterpretation of an abbreviation I've ever seen in my entire life. So we're headed across the pond where we meet Karina Gasparova, who is an employee of S-Docs, which is a British company that provides, quote, paperless trade solutions. Sounds fake, but I'm sure it's real. Her boss is named Alexander Goulandris, and he included in an email to her, well, the email read this. The solution is currently used by XX, the 2 letters, Agris companies, and YY barge lines in corn cargoes in south-north flows in the 4 question marks waterways. There's a lot of shorthand in that email. Reading it out loud, it sounds like gibberish. Well, this woman, Ms. Gasparova, is suing, or at least attempting to sue, her boss, Mr. Goulandris, for sexual harassment at work because she believed those XXs in the email meant kisses and the YY meant sexual contact. And the 4 question marks was a coded way of saying, when would she be ready to engage in sexual acts?
That's wild.
He also ended an email with AJG. Now, you already know his first name is Alexander. His last name is Goulandris with a G. This is clearly his initials.
Clearly.
He used them lowercase. My dad, his email signature, lowercase initials.
Yes.
JAD.
When I send an email, I will frequently just sign it DL.
She claims in her lawsuit that she believed AJG was an abbreviation of, quote, a jumbo genital. No. A jumbo genital. What? Why would you believe that?
Like,
what does that even mean?
I don't know what that means.
Why would you end an email with
that commonly used abbreviation
that we all know
we're always sending to women in Tinder messages and on Hinge and such?
Sup, AJG? Question mark?
Why?
Not even once. Why? This, this pops up all the time. There's old versions of it that pop up on social media, and sometimes on local news stations, they'll show like, ooh, is your kid texting and you don't know what they mean? Here's how to decode your kid's messages. And it's always a lot of fear mongering, right?
Right.
Never has one of those said AJG equals a giant genital.
Jumbo genital.
A jumbo genital.
Singular. Singular.
Yeah,
usually,
just one.
Usually we refer to those in the plural.
So for what it's worth, the tribunal with whom she was seeking damages said the incident was not sexual in nature, and they also rejected the claim. Ms. Gasparova said, well, Mr. Goulandris is rich and powerful, and a man in his power would be too clever to make his advances obvious. She actually submitted this grievance a couple years back, but it just came to light. She resigned after the attempt was rejected, and then she was ordered to pay the company £5,000. Essentially, like, you wasted their time.
You wasted our time. Please compensate us for the billable hours.
Yeah.
And the annoyance.
The tribunal panel said she, quote, demonstrated a tendency to make extraordinary allegations without evidence.
You don't say.
A jumbo genital.
It's like a straightforward business email. Are you coming on to me? Like. It probably took everything in Alexander's power to say, hey, don't flatter yourself.
Yeah, right? No, I'm sending those to someone else. All right, who do you got today?
This. We had a texter for the 785 tell us they had to pull over their car during that story.
Love it. Dude, I can't. Like, how does either she was intentionally looking to stir something up and thought she'd get lucky with the right jury or tribunal or whatever, or she is a complete raving lunatic.
What with all the Me Too that's happening these days.
Right.
A jumbo.
Look, man, I've seen some things. I spent I met my wife on a dating app, right?
I did too.
A veteran.
My wife, not your wife.
Right. Not that Abby, the other Abby.
Right.
Like I'm a veteran of that game. All right, I've been through the wars.
Yeah.
I never saw YY or AJG and thought, oh hello, okay.
Yeah,
Now we're talking.
That's how I've been signing off text to my wife since I met her. AJG.
AJG. Fellas, text your girl AJG and see what she says.
Seriously, see if it's particularly if you're younger, if you're of the Tinder generation.
Text your wife or your girlfriend or fiance or whoever. AJG.
AJG. Just see how that goes.
Do not get yourself in trouble. Make sure it's clear it's a joke. That's unbelievable.
Oh God.
I think this wins. I think this beats the DUI dog.
I don't know, man. The DUI dog is really, really good.
Oh, mercy.
General. Oh, gosh. You wasted everyone's time.
Yeah. The funny thing is making her pay them.
Yes. You owe us money. I think so.
Oh, my God. I think that one gets my vote.
I think so, too.
AJG gets the win. Coming in hot on Friday to pick up the win in What Is Wrong With You. Our What Is Wrong With You, as always, is brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. That's Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard. Oh, my God. I need to take a break and get some water. When we come back, after we walk that one off, the Big 12 is reportedly interested in expansion out east to Connecticut. We'll explain next on 580 Sports Talk.
Former KLA president.
We're back on 580 Sports Talk. Paul in the YouTube comments said, AGG wins forever. A moment of silence for all the AAGs out there. an average genital.
Hey, we ain't got to talk about that.
Man,
We were just talking to Britt during the commercial break. He came in the control room, and he made a good point. Nobody uses the word jumbo in conversation. Like, that's not a word that's generally part of the vocab.
no, it's really not.
Like, unless I'm talking about shrimp
Yeah, jumbo shrimp.
or a jet.
Yeah. Like the XXYY question mark thing, that was already enough of a stretch. You didn't have to throw in HAG.
And another thing.
By the way, oh my God, that was going to be hard to beat in a couple weeks. Holy smokes. That is so good. So good. I did want to touch on this really quick before we get to the top of the hour. So this week, there was a lot made earlier in the week, and we talked about this. I know Jake and Fulton talked about it a lot on Mic'd Up too. The ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, apparently some discontent among its ranks. The quote-unquote Magnificent Seven, a group of 7 schools in that league who apparently are interested in maybe challenging their grant of rights contract, breaking away from their current deal, breaking away from the conference, finding greener pastures. Well, it was reported by a couple different outlets, and we remarked at the time, like, wow, usually we have a source off when these realignment stories or rumors break out, but it was pretty much, no, a lot of these schools are upset. It was pretty much uniform reporting across the board. The next day, The Athletic put out a report that mentioned other realignment rumors. How close is the ACC in terms of unity as a group? What does the Pac-12's media contract timeline look like, et cetera, a lot of similar stuff. Then there was a section near the bottom headlined, Why UConn is on the Big 12's radar. And I thought, I can't believe that it is. And part of it reads, it's no secret that the Big 12 is interested in swiping Colorado and Arizona from the Pac-12. I thought, Arizona State and Utah, surprisingly absent from that sentence. But they go on to say, but with that league's media rights negotiations dragging on from the summer or into the summer, the Big 12 is having its patience tested, and Brett Yormark is exploring his options for expanding the Big 12 into either a 14 or 16-member conference one way or another. Nothing seems imminent in terms of extending invitations, but the first-year commissioner is doing his homework, and UConn is one of several schools on his radar. I thought, okay, this is just a due diligence thing. They just won a national title. We know the Big 12 wants to be the preeminent basketball conference, whatever. Then today, Russ Steinberg, who writes for Boardroom, which is Kevin Durant's media company, who also is a former, not necessarily beat writer, but he's pretty tied in at UConn. He's written about UConn for a long time. He tweeted this morning, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark was recently on UConn's campus and met with the administration. They stressed it was very exploratory and does not mean anything is imminent. Says, will the Big 12 invite UConn? Don't know. Would UConn accept? I don't know, but both sides are doing their due diligence. I get the Big 12's interest. You want to be the best basketball league, closer team for West Virginia, another East Coast presence. I get that. But by the same token, you still need good football, and UConn adds nothing football-wise. I know they were better this year. They'd still be the worst team in the league by a lot.
By a whole lot.
Like, they were playing Holy Cross and Army and, like, Lehigh. Like, those are the teams UConn was beating.
That's why this doesn't make any sense from UConn's perspective, because they've already done this once. They've already left a conference where they were in a good situation to go chase more money and be in a conference that would theoretically give their football team a greater platform. And they were a laughingstock in the AAC to the point where they went independent.
Yeah.
And decided, look, this doesn't work for us. Like, we can't, what's the saying about you can't let the tail wag the dog?
Mm-hmm.
Like, at UConn, basketball is what rules. That is how they've built their brand. That is the sport where they've had the most success, men's and women's basketball. Football's tough in the Northeast. College football, tough in the Northeast. You think about, like, the historic success, recent history success of programs like Boston College or Syracuse or those programs up in the Northeast. UMass has been terrible broadly terrible since they joined Division I, since they made the move from Division II to Division I. So it doesn't make any sense for me for UConn. Like, they feel like as a Big East school with an independent D1 football program, like that makes the most sense for them. That's a better fit than I think anything the Big 12 can offer them.
Real quick, I do want to point this out. Tom in the YouTube comments, Tom, appreciate you hanging out and hanging out with us a little bit. He did say, when my point about who UConn played in football, he said, wrong, go check their schedule. Well, UConn's wins came against Central Connecticut, Fresno State, Florida International, Boston College, UMass, and Liberty. I mean,
not exactly punching with the heavyweights of college football.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm sorry. They did not play Lehigh this year or Holy Cross. Holy Cross was, I believe, the year prior, or at least in recent memory. Either way, they're better off independent for football than playing against
100%
Oklahoma State and Kansas State.
Yes, 100%. Like they tried the conference thing. There was a time. I mean, they made an Orange Bowl. Well, be fair to UConn football.
Or Fiesta Bowl, wasn't it?
Nah, I think you're right.
It was they played OU.
They made a BCS game and played OU, and it didn't go super great for that. Was a year like it was a 4-way tie for first place, I think, in the Big East, and UConn at 8-4 ended up going to a BCS game. So they did have that level of success, and they never got it back. And then when they went to the AAC, things did not get better, and it was worse for their basketball program being in that league. Now, the Big 12 compared to the Big East for basketball purposes, that's much closer. Like that, I guess, is the sell. Like, what if instead of we got to put our football program in a good situation, but basketball is going to not be as prominent nationally in this league, the AAC, which was the case. You can go to a league where your basketball program will remain prominent, nationally prominent, one of the best, if not, that's what they're trying to build, the best basketball league in the country. And it gives your football team a chance to have a league schedule and maybe a better fit for them to grow. Like, I get the pitch. I do, from the Big 12 side. I just don't know why UConn would do it. I think UConn should be happy to be in the Big East. If anything, what the Big 12 ought to look at is like a scheduling agreement with the Big East, like they have with the Big 12 and Big East showdown that's starting this year. Like, they should want to play those teams.
Yeah.
I just don't know how much sense it makes to bring those teams into their league, integrate them into their league.
I understand it. I don't think UConn would say yes, though. And it's worth it to do and granted, I don't know. I don't know the inner workings of their administration or even their athletic department or anything like that, but it feels like the Big East is such a perfect fit. Like, they put up a celebration at Madison Square Garden when they announced they were coming back to the Big East.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a perfect fit, and that is a basketball school. In a lot of ways, there's basketball schools, there's football schools, there's some schools that are really good at both. That's a basketball school. And it just feels like that makes a lot more sense. Plus, in terms of travel, in terms of regionality, 5 schools in the current Big East are closer than West Virginia is, which would be the closest Big 12 school. I know that geography is not everything, or in some leagues, much anymore, of anything. Yeah. But that's a lot, especially for a program that has had some financial problems with its football team.
Yeah, I think things are clicking for UConn. Like right now, obviously, basketball team's back on top of the world. They're in a conference that means a lot to that university historically. And football, as an independent, has had an opportunity to get its footing back and to steady itself. And they went to a bowl last year. So I feel like they're in a really good spot. And I think it suits them. And it's not a knock on UConn at all. I just think their current situation suits them better than the Big 12 would.
You have to look long-term, I think, with things like this. So I just don't know that the Big 12 would be the best long-term fit for them, or that UConn would be the best fit for the Big 12 either. We have to get to a break here at the top of the hour. We've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines, a Royals preview, and a bunch more coming up in the final hour of 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 1 hour left on 580 Sports Talk on this Friday afternoon. It's a Feel Good Friday. Thank you so much for being a part of the show with us. Really appreciate that, as we do every single day. If you missed any of the show, head to our website, 580wibw.com. You can check out the podcast version of the show. Just go to the podcasts tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk. And of course, head to our YouTube channel. It's called Sports on 580 WIBW. Go subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out all of today's show, plus all of our back catalog of shows as well. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. 1 hour to go on the show today. Coming up in this final hour, we'll get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We've also got a great story coming from the state of Georgia about a couple that got married and decided they didn't want fancy catering. They wanted Chili's. The bride in this couple specifically apparently loves Chili's more than anything, maybe more than her new husband. And I think they're legends, and I think they should be celebrated. Not everyone agrees with that, though. We'll get to that coming up later this hour. Plus, we'll preview the weekend series between the Royals and the White Sox. It'll be Greinke, Lyles, and TBD to start for the Royals this weekend. Brad Keller's on the IL. We'll talk about that coming up later on this hour. Plus, we'll still take your texts throughout the hour. The text line number is 785-272-9429. And you can hop into the comment section. Again, our YouTube channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. By the way, Tom in the YouTube comments, who was chiming in and participating in our talk about UConn in the Big 12 last hour, reminded us that Chief Great Anthony Sherman was a UConn grad.
Yes, he was.
I believe until a couple years ago, I think he had been the last UConn player drafted for a while. It might not have been Anthony Sherman, but there was a period of time where it had been several years since a Connecticut player had been drafted. It was either Sherman or, man, for a while, I think it was just Sherman and Dan Orlovsky who were in the league, who were UConn grads.
Oh, there's one other guy, but we ain't got to talk about him.
UConn. Who is?
Oh no, wait. His brother played at UConn.
Oh, yeah.
DJ played at UConn.
Yeah. The one you were
mistake.
thinking of played at Florida.
Yes.
Yes.
My mistake.
Yes.
No,
Hernandez
actually, they had a bunch of guys, maybe not that hung around, but they had a bunch of guys around, like Byron Jones.
No, that's true. Byron Jones. Maybe it was
Obi
Byron
Melifonwu was kicked around the league for a while.
They had a kid drafted last year too, defensive lineman. Travis Jones,
went to Baltimore.
I think I had him as a first round pick in my mock draft too. He went not in the first round. Went a little bit later than that. But we do appreciate all you guys who are hopping in on the text line and the YouTube comments as well throughout the show and throughout every single one of our shows. By the way, I want to remind you, Royals baseball tonight, 7:10 first pitch. Pregame begins at 6:30. We've got some 580 Sports Talk overtime leading you into Royals Radio Network coverage tonight. We'll hear from Mark Lamar, who spoke to Jake earlier today on Mic'd Up. We talked about his piece over at Royals Review earlier in the week about the 3 things that are going right for the Royals right now. So we will talk about, or we'll hear from him coming up at the top of the 6 o'clock hour. Right now, though, it is time to get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines for this Friday, May 19th. The biggest one of the day around the world of sports, big enough that it led the CBS News at the top of the hour. Jim Brown, the Hall of Fame running back player who today, I think some people, certainly of a certain generation, would say is maybe the greatest football player alive, or at least the greatest running back of all time. Sorry, misspoke. Of all time. Jim Brown passed away last night, actually, at the age of 87. That was announced and made official by his family earlier on today. The phrase that was used at the top of the hour on our national news was that Jim Brown was a complicated man. And I think you have to incorporate everything when you talk about someone who, especially who's in the public eye, the good as well as the bad, as well as sometimes the alleged. In terms of football, Jim Brown is indisputably one of the greatest players of all time. If you told me right now, I think Jim Brown is a top 5 football player of all time, you could probably make a pretty easy argument without a whole lot of research. Again, as I mentioned earlier, he played 9 years in the NFL. Only 9. He could have played longer. And very famously gave up his NFL career to pursue other interests in the mid-1960s. 9 NFL seasons. He was an 8-time first-team All-Pro. 8 times led the NFL in rushing yards. 7 of those years, he ran for 1,200 or more yards. He was playing in 12 and 14 game seasons, by the way. He scored double figures in total touchdowns 8 of his 9 years, including his last year when he won an MVP. He had 21 touchdowns and 1,500 yards while averaging over 5 yards a carry. The numbers are just preposterous. 3-time AP MVP, Rookie of the Year. He was an All-Pro and first-team All-Pro 8 times, made a Pro Bowl all 9 years of his career. The production on the field, untouchably great until Walter Payton and then arguably Barry Sanders. We've talked about this before on the show, I think, at some point in the probably distant past. Very few times can you point to a position or a sport and say, that guy is the greatest, or indisputably this group is the greatest at their spot. In hockey, it's Gretzky. He's the great one for a reason. He's got everything.
Mm-hmm.
In football, and maybe for some people, specifically maybe when you were born or when you paid attention the most to the NFL, you might feel differently. But it feels like when you encompass the entire history of the NFL, generally people will tell you the 3 greatest running backs of all time in some order are Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders. Some people would say Barry is at the top. Some people would say it's Payton. Some people would tell you still that it's Jim Brown. That seems to be a general consensus. And again, if you wanted to tell me right now, Jim Brown on the football field, still the best running back of all time, you can make an easy argument for that. He was a pioneer, or at least was at the forefront of a lot of social issues, and his activism for Black Americans, significant to say the least. Very important, a trailblazer in a lot of ways off the field. And that deserves a lot of praise as well. There is also, and again, complicated is probably the only way to put it because I don't really even know what other word to use. There are a lot of allegations. Not all of them were fully prosecuted, but a lot of allegations, some of which did get prosecuted, of mistreatment of women. And in some cases, violent and truly disgusting accounts of it. I've seen reaction today that, there's going to be time in the future to bring those things up. Well, that's a very big part of who, especially post-football Jim Brown was. And I don't mean to say one's bigger deal than the other, and I don't want to get into it because I don't want to say the wrong thing.
It gives a full accounting of the person that we're talking about here. We can't just say like nobody would expect us to say when O.J. Simpson dies, hey, this is the football stuff he did. Let's just remember that today. No, there's a full accounting of the person that you have to do when you are reckoning with what their legacy is. Mm-hmm. And the full accounting of Jim Brown includes obviously incredible athletic ability and obviously a great acting career, but also some very troubling allegations. And in fact, there was one conviction in 1999 of him smashing the window of his wife's car. Mm-hmm. I believe that woman remained his wife until his death. There's some troubling stuff in Jim Brown's history. There's also some incredibly important and influential work when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to trying to put a halt to gang violence and stop the influence of gangs. Jim Brown was influential in that way as well. So again, I think to say complicated almost over reduces it as well. But there is a lot to Jim Brown, and so much, in fact, that we could spend the rest of the hour going line by line down Jim Brown's resume, and we wouldn't come close to summing up the man in full. We wouldn't come close. We wouldn't do it justice one way or another. There's just so much. Jim Brown's life is so much. So I want to focus on 2 things in particular when it comes to Jim Brown. Number one, have you ever seen a game of lacrosse?
Yes.
So if you're familiar with the sport of lacrosse, and if you've seen the game played, it's the one with the ball in the stick with the net in it. Mm-hmm. When a player has possession of the ball in lacrosse, they have to move the stick. Can you picture what I'm talking about? Like when a player is on the run or when a player is...
Yeah, there's always constant movement with the hands and the arm.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a rule. You have to move the stick. The stick, when you have possession of the ball in your lacrosse stick, you have to be in motion at all times. That was not a rule until Jim Brown played lacrosse and was so otherworldly dominant at lacrosse, just holding the stick next to his body, because who's going to take the ball off of Jim Brown?
Nobody.
Who was going to catch him? Who was going to knock him off the ball? Who was going to take the ball away from Jim Brown?
No one.
This fundamental rule to the sport of lacrosse exists because Jim Brown played the sport. He was arguably the greatest lacrosse player to ever live. And that was just something he did on the side as a hobby.
You know what's kind of crazy? You want to talk about 2 guys who were, different lengths of professional sports career, but 2 guys who were all-time greats, maybe greatest ever in their time, who also became major social activists and were, well, Wilt less so than Jim Brown, but also were significant in other sports. Wilt Chamberlain's one of the most important people in the history of U.S. volleyball and like the popularization of volleyball as a sport. Is Wilt Chamberlain after his NBA career? That's not a direct comparison, but that's kind of crazy how those guys influenced these other sports.
The other story that's great about Jim Brown, and it almost feels like it can't possibly be true, but it is, that Jim Brown played the game of football a certain way and felt like the game of football needed to be played a certain way. And he was not particularly fond of players who did not play the game the way he felt the game should be played. One of those players was a gentleman by the name of Franco Harris, who himself is recently deceased. I believe he passed away last year.
Yeah.
Franco Harris, of course, Hall of Fame running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And late in Franco Harris's career, it looked like he was going to pass Jim Brown and become the all-time rushing leader in the NFL. And that did not sit well with Jim Brown, to the point that Jim Brown said he wanted to come out of retirement. This was in 1983 when Jim Brown was 47 years old. He said, I want to come out of retirement. I can't let Franco Harris, who he felt shied away from contact and ran out of bounds, which, I mean, you watch Franco Harris. Yeah, he kind of did do that. He could not abide Franco Harris breaking his record, to the point where when Harris retired, the two of them ran a 40-yard foot race against each other. Franco Harris was 34 and recently retired. Jim Brown was 48. Franco Harris won the foot race. But that's what we're talking about. Like, those two stories to me are Jim Brown's dominance, his greatness, his stubbornness, those two stories, I think, sum up a lot of what we're talking about here. An icon in American life, Jim Brown.
My favorite story about Jim Brown's playing career is that he used to always get up slowly. Was he hurt? Was he fine? You don't know. He always got up as if he was hurt or banged up. You would never know. Do you target a certain part of the body? Or are you going to get run over? I have no idea how healthy he's feeling. He was a life that, your guy, Bomani Jones, I know you're a big fan of Bomani. He put on Twitter right after this news broke, he's like, don't try to sum this up in 280 characters. Like, an obituary can barely even scratch the surface. Like, it's hard to do. And I was not alive for Jim Brown's heyday. Like, I'm not able to put that into that kind of context. Neither of us was. But a very full life, to say the least, on the football field, one of the greatest of all time. A long legacy, whatever word you want to put along with that, for sure, both on and off the field. Jim Brown, dead at 87 years old.
By the way, he averaged 15 points a game as a sophomore for Syracuse's basketball team, and was also a standout track athlete. Like, we're talking about, like, there's a very short list of greatest athletes of all time.
Yep.
He's on it with a bullet and always will be. First headline for me, let's go ahead and update you on the happenings of day 2 of the second major of the PGA, or the championship golf season, the 2023 PGA Championship, currently taking place at Oak Hill Country Club in Rochester, New York. It has been a grind. Only 12 players have broken par today, and only 11 players are under par for the tournament presently. Your current leader is Scotty Scheffler, who is 3 under for the day through 17 holes and 6 under for the championship. He's got a 1-shot lead over the Canadian Corey Connors, who is 5 under. Victor Hovland, the Norwegian, is 4 under. Callum Tarran, a 32-year-old Englishman who has never won or come all that close to winning on the PGA Tour. I guess that's not true. He finished in a tie for second at the RSM Classic in the winter season, November of this past year. He is 3 under, 3 shots back. Group at 2 under includes Shane Lowry, Justin Suh, Keegan Bradley, and Bryson DeChambeau, who led the tournament in the clubhouse before play was suspended yesterday at 4 under. He's 2 over through 12 today. The only other players under par, Taylor Pendrith, Justin Rose, and Brooks Koepka, are 1 under. The cut line is projected at 5 over par. Unfortunately, does not appear that Gary Woodland is going to make that cut. It has been a tough weekend for Gary, and at present, he stands at 8 over par for the tournament, 5 over through 17 today. So it doesn't look like Gary's going to make the weekend, though he did have a viral highlight earlier today in which, on the very difficult 6th hole, he had to putt in the bunker to give himself a better lie to play a shot out of the bunker. He could not swing the golf club, get a backswing where the ball was in the bunker. So he putted the ball forward to the center of the bunker and then hold out from the bunker for par. Regular stuff.
Normal golf stuff.
Somebody talented enough to do that. Also not going to be around for the weekend. That is golf in a nutshell for you. Lots of good players have struggled to make the cut. Jon Rahm has actually birdied 3 straight holes to get to 3 over. The number 1 player in the world shot a 76 yesterday, but 15 holes into his day, he's 3 under today. So he looks like he is going to see the weekend. But not many guys going low right now. It's Scotty Scheffler, last year's Masters champion, with a 1-shot lead.
He has been on fire over the last year plus now.
If he were putting well, he might have like 5 or 6 wins already this year. So the only thing he's not doing well relative to the competition.
Wow.
And this week he's putting pretty well. So that probably means he's going to win, and probably means you should have taken him at plus 165 earlier this afternoon.
Speaking from experience?
Yes.
Continuing on with today's 580 Sports Talk headlines, let's talk some Power 5 conference payouts, shall we? This reported today by USA Today Sports. They've got probably the best sourcing on all things financials in college sports. That's who has the database on college coach salaries we reference a bunch. So your Power 5 per school payouts for the 21-22 fiscal year. So this is last year. So the year KU won the national championship in college basketball, last year's spring sports, etc. We won't know this year's for a little while longer. The Big Ten led all conferences, $58.8 million paid out per school last year. That is astounding. The SEC, just under 50, $49.9 million per school. That's also a lot of money. The Big 12 comes in third, 42, ranging between $42 and $44.9 million. Fourth is the ACC, 37.9 to 41.3. So even their highest end is lower than the lowest payout in the Big 12. And then the Pac-12 comes in last at $37 million per school. A lot of money, but as we know, in the business world and in the sports business world, a lot of money is not all the money. And until you've got all the money, it is never enough money. And that is why teams in the ACC, schools in the ACC, I should say, are looking to move elsewhere, why the Big 12 is continuing to look at other expansion candidates, why the Pac-12 has been in a tizzy for the better part of a year at this point, trying to figure out what they're going to do once USC and UCLA leave in a year. That is your update, though, on how much each school is pulling in. Big 12's at a good spot right now. They really are. I know things are going to change when Texas and Oklahoma leave after one more year, but Big 12, especially if they add another couple of schools, we talked about that earlier, interested in Colorado and Arizona, maybe among others from the Pac-12. We know they'll be interested in the ACC. I would not be surprised if Brett Yormark was like the catalyst for all these schools saying, hey, what if we broke away from the ACC? Like we have an outstanding invitation to leave from the Big 12. They emailed all of us asking, hey, want to hang out? Maybe. But the Big 12 in a good spot right now. Third biggest payout of any of the Power 5 conferences.
Continuing our 5A Sports Talk headlines, it's that time. It's the
Playoffs?
Roundup. It's everybody's favorite segment within a segment, which we check in on the playoff action in the Big 12, in the NHL and the NBA. I'm sorry, you distracted me. Were you roping there?
I was trying to lasso.
Were you like roping?
Yeah, well, I got like a third of the way into trying to hog tie, and then I realized I looked like a moron, so I stopped.
I thought it was pretty convincing.
The thought was there. The first part was okay.
Yeah, the cast, if you want to call it. Anyhow, the NHL and the NBA playoff action last night. We'll start in the NHL. We mentioned it on the show earlier today. The 6th longest game in the history of the National Hockey League playoffs ended at the 1948 mark of the 4th overtime last night. Bars were about to close in Raleigh, and hopefully they stayed open because there were some Hurricanes fan who could have used a drink, as Matthew Tkachuk's game winner at 1948 of the 4th overtime gave the Florida Panthers a 3-2 win in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals over the Carolina Hurricanes. Tonight, the West Final opens with the Vegas Golden Knights playing host to the Dallas Stars. I think I picked Dallas.
Yes.
And who did you pick?
I think I also picked Dallas.
I think we're both
and then
on-
we flipped on the East.
I think
Panthers,
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both on the Stars, even though they don't have home ice. So that's what's happening in the NHL. Last night in the NBA, Jamal Murray came alive in the fourth quarter, scoring 23 of his 37 points as the Denver Nuggets rallied from an 11-point second-half deficit to defeat the Los Angeles Lakers 108-103 and take a 2-0 lead in the Western Conference Finals. The Nuggets halfway to their first conference championship in their NBA history. Game 3 is Saturday night.
So you've heard me talk about how much I appreciate Jamal Murray's game and how much I enjoy watching him. I do want to ask, though, because I didn't know the Nuggets training staff had this. How did they get access to Michael's secret stuff from Space Jam? Man, start of the third quarter, like you could have put you or me out there and our shots would have been closer than Jamal Murray. His legs looked dead.
Yeah, that was
nothing at all in them.
I said it on Twitter in group text with two of my buddies who are big Nuggets fans. We were saying the same thing. Like his legs look gone. There was a stretch of play, I think it was fairly late in the third quarter, where he got up a 3-pointer and it missed short. And Denver got the offensive rebound and it got back to Murray. He took a 2-pointer and it missed short. I mean, barely getting to the front rim. And that's like the surest sign that you don't have enough life in your legs if you can't get the jumper where it needs to go.
Not enough push.
And then the fourth quarter started and he couldn't miss. It was unbelievable. It was like somebody had administered a shot of adrenaline. And he played the entire fourth quarter. He played all but 3 minutes of the second half. And I thought, man, he doesn't have enough legs. They're going to have to give him a rest. No, they didn't have to give him a rest. He scored 23 points. The Lakers as a team scored 24 in the fourth quarter. Both teams, like it looked like the 15th round of a heavyweight title fight. And it's only game 2 of the series. Everybody looked dead on their feet. LeBron James, the surest tell that LeBron is exhausted. 1, he starts flopping. And 2, he starts shooting threes. And LeBron's never been a great three-point shooter.
No.
Right now, he is a bad three-point shooter. He went 0 for 4 from 3 in the fourth quarter. The only guy who looked like he had any juice in his legs was the youngest guy, which I think is Austin Reeves. I think Reeves is the youngest guy. Like Austin Reeves banked in a 3 late to make it a 2-point game. Reeves looked spry. Everybody else just looks exhausted. You can blame the altitude. You can blame the intensity and the up and down nature of these playoff games, the fact that we're in the conference finals. But Denver holds on. I don't think Denver played great last night, and they won. And they're up 2-0 in the series. Certainly don't think this is going to be a sweep. I would expect LA, honestly, to win game 3 Saturday night. But big edge for the number 1 seed. They've just got to win 2 of the next 5, where the Lakers have to find 4 wins in those 5. And they've got to find at least one of them in Denver, where they had visibly fatigued in the second half of both of the first 2 games.
I was very impressed by that Nuggets comeback last night. You know, I know LeBron has gotten he's a flopper. He plays the wrong way. He's gotten a lot of that his whole career.
He has.
And I think even as an avowed hater, not that I like personally hate LeBron. I've never been a LeBron guy. I've said that plenty of times. I think a lot of it is still probably overkill. Then last night happened and I thought, dude, you're not helping yourself. Like you're shooting your team out of this game. And you're just diving on the floor like you're Greg Louganis. Like this is bad, man.
Yeah, the 4 missed threes in the fourth were big. Anthony Davis made a 3, and then they decided, let's just run plays to get Anthony Davis 3-pointers. Like, that's viable. AD, we had a texter ask how he fared last night because the same texter predicted he will not go for 40 like he did in game 1. Well, you called it. He had 18 points, but he was just 4 of 15 from the field. Alternate day. Anthony Davis.
Even game Davis.
Every other Davis.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I've said this before, but I really hate how good Austin Reeves has become because I said so many mean things about his game when he was at Oklahoma. Jake and I used to go back and forth all Big 12 season about how Jake would say, no, he's good. He's an actually tough player. I said, no, he sucks. Overrated. He's a bum. He's a bum at Wichita State, bum at Oklahoma. He's no good. And now he's like the 4th best player in this series.
Yeah. 5th. Well, depending on how you feel about Anthony Davis on a given night. But like
in game 2, better than Anthony Davis.
I've been listening to lots of podcasts and reading lots of articles because I'm absorbing all of the Nuggets content I can as a Nuggets fan. And a lot of the discussion from the Lakers side last night was, man, they need to let Austin Reeves cook.
Yeah. At least he can make a shot.
Yeah. He's like 17 of 28 in his last 4 games from 3.
That's
like,
crazy.
Cut it out. That's stupid. Water's got to find its level on that. Like Rui Hachimura made all but one of his shots last night. Like those two are the reason that these first two games have been close, more so than it's been Davis and LeBron, certainly last night. So that's probably a good sign for the Lakers again, because you go home and you're not playing at altitude and your role guys all play better typically. But I don't know how they're going to get better from Reeves and Hachimura than they got in those first two games. Those dudes were awesome.
Yeah.
So also Nikola Jokic has 3 total fourth quarter points in this series.
And they're 2-0.
And they're 2-0 because he doesn't have to score.
No.
Not when Jamal Murray's doing what Jamal Murray did last night. That was special.
Really quickly, we have to get to a timeout here, but to round out our 580 Sports Talk headlines for today, we were talking about what if hockey came to Kansas City? What are the Royals going to do for their next stadium? We've talked about that a bunch, and this situation seems like it's only going to get a little more messy. Mayor Quentin Lucas of Kansas City, Missouri, took to Twitter today to say, Kansas City and Jackson County have been strong partners for the Kansas City Royals since the team's inception. Taxpayers from both jurisdictions have invested mightily in the success of the Royals franchise. Having already signed on to a border war truce with our Kansas neighbors, Kansas City will now not engage in a intrastate regional race to the bottom that ultimately does little more than fleecing our taxpayers. We encourage the Royals to timely resolve the many questions surrounding their future home so that all involved can speak openly and transparently on any future public movement. This seemingly came out of nowhere, and I thought, what? Where did this come from? Well, 3 dignitaries of North Kansas City, or Clay County, Missouri specifically, came out with a statement today essentially saying, hey, Royals, you want to come to Clay County? You want to move up north of the river a little bit? We've got a spot for you at the old bowling alley. We're going to tear that down. And we got a spot for you right by I-29 near the Chicken and Pickle in North Kansas City. It'll work out for you. No mention about public funding for that potential stadium. But I imagine, and Jake and I were talking about this when we were switching shows at 3 o'clock, I think they didn't mention any taxpayer dollars, because why would you do that when you're trying to garner public support for moving the team and moving them to your jurisdiction in the metro area? I would imagine that the Royals are not going to pay for every cent of their new stadium wherever they end up. Just a hunch.
Yep, but I have advice for both Jackson and Clay County. If the Royals come to you hat in hand and say, hey, we need public dollars or you don't get the stadium, tell them to shove off. They can pay for their own stadium. And as long as the Royals do, they put it wherever they want.
That'll do it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines. Coming up on the other side of this break, a phenomenal story coming from the state of Georgia about wedding catering. Plus, we're going to preview Royals versus White Sox, the series that begins tonight. That's coming up on 580 Sports Talk. Back on 580 Sports Talk, Brendan and Dan here with you until 6 o'clock. Then we've got a little 580 Sports Talk overtime, followed by Royals baseball tonight. Pregame begins at 6:30. Game taking place at the Rate on the south side of Chicago. Royals White Sox this weekend. By the way, a quick update on the Royals stadium story we just got to. Frank White has chimed in.
Okay.
One of the greatest Royals, also longtime politician in Jackson County, Missouri.
Yes.
Jackson County taxpayers have long supported our teams, ensuring first-class stadiums since 1973. Jackson County's unwavering commitment, is demonstrated this year with over $50 million allocated toward the Truman Sports Complex. Importantly, the Royals are contractually obligated to play at Kauffman Stadium until 2031. I echo the stance by Mayor Lucas. I refuse to participate in an inter-county bidding war that ultimately harms our residents. I will endorse a new downtown stadium only when I am convinced it serves the best interests of Jackson County residents, et cetera, et cetera. That might get worse before it gets better for the stadium situation for the Royals.
Very interesting day of developments on that front.
All right, we have to get to this story. This popped up, really went viral over the last 48 hours or so. But we're headed down to Georgia, where Madison and Greg Mulkey, they got married back in March. Congratulations to the happy couple, Madison and Greg. And they revealed that their wedding catering cost them less than $2,000 for a wedding of 100 people or 99 people. Less than $2,000. That's pretty good.
Yeah, you do that on your food budget, you're solid.
Yeah, food, as I learned a year ago, and you did as well, or more than a year ago, I guess, food costs a lot of money when you're catering a wedding. And you can get good food, you can get bad food for a whole lot more than $2,000 for a wedding as well. Well, instead of saying, well, why would we spend a lot of money on catering? And according to The Knot, a wedding website, it is $75 per person as the national average for wedding catering. I will tell you this much. Our wedding was not $75 a head. I can guarantee you that much. Well, they decided, well, what if we didn't do that and instead we had Chili's cater our wedding? You know, that Chili's. I found love in this Chili's tonight, or whatever that quote is from The Office. That same Chili's restaurant. So she shared that it cost less than $2,000 to cater her wedding from Chili's on her TikTok account. That included, in full, trays of chicken crispers, sliders, egg rolls, chips and salsa, Cajun chicken pasta, salad, and even specialty meals for gluten and dairy-free wedding guests.
Now, we assume that when she says egg roll, she's talking about the iconic Southwestern egg roll.
I mean, it has to be.
Which is a top 2 appetizer when it comes to national chain restaurants, and it ain't number 2.
So this is from the Daily Mail, which is a UK publication, but writing about this American couple.
Absolutely the trashiest rag there is.
Oh, by far.
Just absolute garbage all the time. I love their URL for this story, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
The URL for the story. People think crazy, got wedding catered. Chili's, in all caps, think great. Like a caveman describing the story in 9 words.
Love search engine optimization. Love it. So this woman, Madison, said, we loved the price point. You really can't beat that price point. Like, you just can't. It's insane we only spent that much for our wedding food. The couple also wanted to have them cater their wedding because it was something that connected them early on in their relationship. What does that mean? Madison went on to share a screenshot with the Daily Mail of an old text message conversation between her and her now husband, Greg, in which he asked her what she thought of the chain Chili's. She responded, quote, "It's the greatest restaurant in all of the land. It's the place with endless chips and salsa and the best 2 for $20 deal on earth." Just ask Jared Casey. Although he would tell you it's Applebee's. It's the place that should cater my wedding. Greg replied immediately, "Okay, we can get married. That's the only acceptable answer." A couple years later, they did get married and did cater it with Chili's. The internet, not entirely on their side. People all across TikTok or Twitter or wherever else were saying, this is unbelievable. I can't believe that they would do such a thing. It's crazy that they would do this. Those are some of the responses that they received. Now, there was also a group that said, quote, "I would be so hyped to find out the wedding food was Chili's. Normalize this. Weddings are out of control. Great idea."
It is a great idea.
And one person simply replied with, "Iconic." I have nothing but respect for this couple. It is hard to plan a wedding. You know this from recent memory. I know this from recent memory. It is hard. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. If you know what you like and you know what your guests are going to like, get that food. Seems like a smart plan to me.
Yes, do the most you can possibly do on that day to make you and your bride happy. And if one of those things is triple dippers for the entire wedding, then do it.
Right? Like, why not?
The last time my wife and I went to Chili's, we just both got a triple dipper for ourselves.
Sounds delicious.
That was our meal.
Sounds wonderful.
Southwestern egg rolls, little sliders, and the honey chipotle chicken crispers. You are not beating that. Look, is Chili's 3-star Michelin dining? No. Is it good eating? Hell yes. And I guarantee you, nobody was disappointed to get up to the line and see those Southwestern egg rolls. Nobody was disappointed to grab those little tongs and reach in and get some chicken tendies with maybe a little honey mustard or ranch or barbecue sauce, however you prefer them.
All right. This is an important comment from Mark here on the YouTube comments. He says, I'm not married, but if they were happy, it's no one else's business. You're darn right. That is 100% the point here. If you're some rando on the internet and you say, I can't believe they would.
Chili's?
Bro, get out of my business.
Quit being such a snob.
Also,
you're not too good for some honey chipotle chicken crispers.
Right. I remember when we were catering our wedding and we thought, well, we need something that, there's vegetarians that we need to accommodate for and people like various different things. Let's just get tacos. Let's have a taco bar. It was perfect. It was great. It tasted really good. Everyone seemed happy with it. Easy. If someone was like, oh, well, you didn't serve 3 courses and you didn't have a menu, get out of my face.
Yeah, you could have served dry chicken. Like, no. Got some little sliders. Got some great comments from the text line from the 785. My wife and I didn't have Chili's catering for our wedding, but we have eaten there incredibly regularly during our marriage. Currently, if you ask our 2-year-old where he wants to eat, it's either Chick-fil-A or Chili's. We are a Chili's family. God bless these pioneers.
Pioneers.
Great.
That is a great text.
Also from the 785, please tell me there was skillet queso. Cannot confirm or deny, but I can tell you my wife, huge fan of the skillet queso.
I think this is genius. Good for them. Good for them for sticking up for what they believe in. If you won't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And they stand for Chili's.
And listen, it's something that is symbolic of their relationship. It's something that they bonded over early on in their relationship, was a mutual love of Chili's. Now, would I have been perhaps a little disappointed to have discovered at that wedding that, they're going to have Chili's there, but I cannot get my baby back. I would have been a little disappointed. I kind of like the Chili's ribs.
Matt on YouTube says the bridal march song was I want my baby back. And from Barbara, my sister had appetizers at her wedding. That sounds awesome.
Yes.
Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. If I'm going to your wedding, like I need edible food, but it doesn't need to be fancy. Because I'm there to probably cry. You were at my wedding. There's lots of tears. I'm there to celebrate you, and I'm there to dance. And I'm there to listen to whatever Kesha songs you decide, or Pitbull songs you decide to put on your wedding playlist. That is what I'm going to your wedding for. As long as there's something edible so I don't pass out, that's good with me. I'm content with that. And if it's Chili's, I'm totally content with that too. Love this. I'm glad that the commentary is on our side on this discussion.
Yes. Makes me feel good. Makes me feel like we've curated a really good listenership if we got people that have our back on the Chili's discussion.
Nothing but respect for you guys and for this couple from Georgia. Shout out to Madison and Greg. Big fans. We've got to get to a break. We'll talk Royals White Sox next here on 580 Sports Talk. 548 on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you. Royals baseball coming up tonight. Start of a series with the Chicago White Sox, 3-game set. Your starters for the series, it'll be Greinke versus Kopech tonight. Michael Kopech for the White Sox. Jordan Lyles versus Lucas Giolito tomorrow afternoon. And the Royals have not announced who their starter is going to be for Sunday's game. The White Sox will send Lance Lynn to the bump. We do know, real quick, the Royals did make a roster move today. Brad Keller to the injured list with right shoulder impingement syndrome, and Max Castillo, La Papa, has been recalled.
So shoulder impingement syndrome is a real thing. I'm not going to suggest that there's not an injury with Brad Keller, but it is for the best for all parties that he not make his next scheduled start after how his last one went.
Look, I mean, do you want to see more Brad Keller on the mound? Because if we don't, I can't imagine the Royals want to see a lot. I hope if he's really hurt, I hope he's okay. Maybe that's why he can't throw strikes.
Man, could be. Typically you see a dip in velocity with an injury, and wasn't really that for Keller. I think his velo's holding fine, but yeah, you hope Greinke can start the series on the right foot tonight and pitch well and give the Royals a chance to win. He struggled a bit on the road, obviously, but pitched pretty well in Milwaukee his last time out away from home. The Royals are 0-9 when Jordan Lyles starts. I would like them to not be 0-10. That'd be great.
The Royals took 3 of 4 from the White Sox when they played a couple weeks back. If they sweep them and win 3 more games, the Royals will be out of the basement.
That's true.
That's how bad the White Sox have been. Like, we talk so much about how, oh my God, the Royals are hard to watch at some points. The White Sox are only 2 games ahead of them in the AL Central standings. They're 16-29 for the year. Sox have won 3 of 6 since losing that series to the Royals. They took just 1 of 3 against the Astros, but then won their series with the Guardians and won pretty convincingly in their 2 wins, 8-3 and 7-2. Look, I mean, the vibes aren't great with this series, but they kind of favor the Royals at least a little bit here because the White Sox, I mean, it's just bad. Everything is bad. Everyone's hurt. They can't really hit. Their pitching's been inconsistent. The Guardians are also not good, so I don't know how much they can even take from that series. This is an opportunity for the Royals. I'm not going to predict them to win this series because, like I said earlier, until I see it more consistently, I just can't do that.
Also, they're starting Jordan Lyles, and they're 0-9 when Jordan Lyles starts.
Which is unthinkable, really. Like, I don't know how you don't get lucky in one of those games.
And it's not like all of his starts have been bad. It's just most of them have been really bad.
And even the ones that aren't really bad, it's still, not
good enough.
No. How many did the Royals win this weekend?
I'll give them 1. I think they've got a chance to win the series. If Greinke starts it on the right foot, if they win tonight, I'll say they'll win the series. They don't win tonight because I think they'll get 1 over the weekend. Sunday, obviously, because I can't predict them to win a Jordan Lyles start.
But
now I'm predicting them to win a TBD start or a bullpen day. But the last bullpen day went pretty well, so we'll see.
Actually worked out. Other things on tap this weekend for you.
We're going to watch PGA Championship. Scotty Scheffler, Corey Connors, both in the house at 5 under, 1 shot ahead of Hovland and DeChambeau. It's going to be a really entertaining tournament, really hard tournament. Not a lot of guys going low. So excited to watch the golf.
For me, the Preakness coming up this weekend. Our good pal, Andy Weingarten, spoke with the guys on Mic'd Up, or the guy, Jake, on Mic'd Up earlier today, made his picks. Mage going to get the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown.
He's only competing against 6 other horses.
He's got pretty good odds of it. I'm going to go with Blazing Sevens as my pick to win. 6-1 odds opening up earlier today. Also, the wife and I are going to go spend the day in Wichita tomorrow. We're going to go catch a Wind Surge game.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Tickets are cheap. Minor league baseball is always fun.
Yeah.
See some players that we'll probably see in the not too distant future in the majors, Twins affiliate. So
Abby and I are going to open the pool tomorrow.
Ooh, are you going to chill in the pool or just open it up?
Depends on how the water looks.
Okay, fair enough.
We got to get the tarp off and we've got to, treat the water. So probably no soak in the pool on Saturday, but we're going to start that process as her school year ends here pretty quick. So we're going to do that. And then I will watch the Nuggets Saturday night. And if they take a 3-0 lead in the Western Conference Finals, you won't be able to tell me nothing.
Let's get to one more break here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll wrap up the week with the final word after this.
What if your body
Been a fun edition of 580 Sports Talk today. If you've missed any of the show, head to our website, 580wibw.com. Check out the podcast tab. Click on 580 Sports Talk, and that's where you'll find the podcast version of the show. You can also go subscribe on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our account. Subscribe. Check out our entire catalog of shows, including today's show. Dan, let's get to a final word to wrap up the week.
It's a fun thing to consider, and Patrick Mahomes has a really good track record of speaking things into existence. But even with that in mind, I wouldn't hold my breath for the NHL coming to Kansas City, not with the Arizona Coyotes potentially relocating or with an expansion franchise anytime soon. You have to have the money. You have to have the big financial backers. And so far, hasn't really been anybody with the big bucks ready to put behind the possibility of an NHL franchise in Kansas City. So if I want to see the Avalanche, I'm going to have to go west on I-70, not an hour east. Probably not anytime soon.
Final word for me, I understand why the Big 12 would be interested in UConn, and I can understand UConn wanting to do its due diligence. Would this make some sense for us? But it just feels like that situation right now in the Big East makes too much sense for that Huskies program, pretty much all of their athletic programs specifically. And for the Big 12, I'd probably focus on other areas. But again, I understand the due diligence and I appreciate the aggressiveness by Brett Yormark. That does it for us on 580 Sports Talk today. We do have some 580 Sports Talk overtime coming up at the top of the hour, leading you into Royals baseball with pregame beginning at 6:30 on the Royals Radio Network here on 580 WIBW. We will be back with a full 6 hours of Sports Talk coming up on Monday, mic'd up with Jake and Fulton from noon until 3, and then 580 Sports Talk with the two of us coming up on Monday from 3 until 6. But until then, enjoy your weekend, whatever you might be doing. For Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. Overtime is up next on 580 WIBW.